The main character, whose name is Paula, hates looking at herself in the mirror because she was born with a very ugly face. This brought the girl many misfortunes in life, but also hardened her character. This unfortunate, ugly woman was born on a cold, gray morning in a dirty stable. The main character's mother could only give birth to her daughter here because her husband was a cruel tyrant who was too lazy to even call her a doctor or a midwife. Tired from a difficult birth, beatings, and hopelessness, the woman holds the baby in her arms. She is glad that she has given birth to the burden she carried for 9 months. A woman looks at her little daughter. Her joy gradually gives way to sadness and anger at the unfairness of life. She realizes that the baby was born with an ugly face. It's just awful. The mother felt sorry for her child. She hugged the child tightly to her chest and said that the girl must have been born at an unkind hour. Poverty and deformity would not bring happiness to the unfortunate baby. The exhausted woman looks at the ray of light that penetrated the dirty stable and tears appear in her eyes. She understands that nothing good awaits her or her daughter. Then the mother of the newborn girl decides to name her Pola, which in the language of this world means dusty life. The woman rested a little to recover and gather her strength after the birth. But sleeping on dirty straw in a foul-smelling stable can hardly be called a good rest. After that, she decided to take the newborn into the house to show her to her father. The drunk man said that such an ugly child would be absolutely useless in the future and cursed his daughter and her mother viciously. When the woman heard all this, her nerves gave out and she wanted to leave home, leaving her child to the mercy of fate. But this time she restrained herself. The woman will leave home in a few years when she gives birth to 3 more daughters. Years have passed. The main character has already become a teenager. She has 3 more sisters whom she has taken care of all her life as best she could, according to her meager strength and capabilities. 2 sisters love Paula very much, but the 3rd sister supports her father in everything and does not trust the main character. She constantly does something nasty to her and is always happy to set her up for harm. This girl has a closed and cruel character. Apparently, she completely took after her tyrannical father in her habits and worldview. The main character has to live in such an unhealthy family environment. This life is a real hell that has been realized in the world of people. First, Paula lost one of her sisters, who was sold to a brothel by her cruel and irresponsible father. One day, the girl ran away from the brothel and returned home to ask her sister for help, but it all ended very sadly. The main character's sister was caught by her father, beaten, and returned to the city cesspool, where she had to sell her body again. The main character watched all this with her own eyes and could not do anything about it. Pola wanted to give her unfortunate sister a helping hand, but her tyrannical father nipped this desire in the bud. He beat the girl and told her not to interfere in matters that were not her business. Otherwise, she could pay dearly for it. After some time, the main character learned that her unfortunate sister, who had to return to the brothel, died from an epidemic of some contagious infectious disease. The main character went to the city to find her dead sister and find out from the townspeople what really happened to her relative. As Paula suspected, her sister did not die of an infectious disease. The main character found the body of her relative, which was lying in the middle of the street, abandoned by everyone and covered with a simple piece of old burlap. This seemed very suspicious to the girl. One passerby told her that her sister was beaten to death by some men at night in this same place. The main character's troubles did not end there. A few weeks later, the girl's youngest sister died of exhaustion because her cruel father starved her. This was a strong emotional blow for the unfortunate Paula. The grief-stricken girl managed to bury her little sister herself, not far from her home in a forest clearing. There was no cross or tombstone on the deceased's grave, but only a freshly picked flower. Paula took care of that. When the main character was returning home after her younger sister's funeral, local girls started picking on her. They said that Polia was very lucky with her face. If she were a beauty, she would have shared her sister's fate long ago. The girl's ugliness at that moment seemed like a blessing to her, which gave her the opportunity to survive in the harshest conditions of hopeless poverty. She had already lost 3 relatives. The unfortunate Paula is left with only a tyrannical father and a sister who hates her, supports her father in everything, and constantly ridicules the girl. This is not life, but a real hell from which there is no escape. The main character thinks that this will be forever, and she breaks the mirror, sees her ugly reflection. But one day, the girl's life changed dramatically. One fine day, a stranger appeared in the main character's house and offered her father a large sum of money for Pola to serve one nobleman. The father of the main character, who was suffering from a severe hangover after yet another binge, at first did not believe his eyes and ears. But gradually coming to his senses, he realized that the stranger was not joking with him and was speaking quite seriously. The only thing that worries the worthless father at the moment is the possibility of easy money. Chronic alcoholism requires considerable financial investments. The father of the main character worries whether his daughter will be returned to him over time and whether the money he received for her will be taken away from him. The stranger hastened to reassure the worthless tyrant. He said that the money would remain with Paula's father forever, no matter what happened in the future. This made the mossy alcoholic very happy. Today, luck smiled on him. The old lecher grinned from ear to ear. Like a predatory beast, he smelled the scent of imminent profit. And he liked this smell very much. The main character listens attentively to the men's conversation and understands that at this moment, her future fate is being decided without her participation. The girl does not dare to interfere in this matter because she is afraid of the wrath of her cruel father, who is quick to punish. The old alcoholic grabbed his daughter's hand harshly and said that from now on she would be in the service of the gentleman who had just paid a tidy sum for her. Although, in the father's opinion, his daughter was not worth the money, given her ugliness, Paula did not argue with her cruel father. She quickly changed her clothes and gathered some belongings. A few minutes later, the girl followed the stranger, who headed to his carriage. The main character's father and her sister, not hiding their great joy at getting rid of the annoying relative, saw the girl off, standing on the threshold of their house. They did not bother to accompany Paula to the carriage of the mysterious stranger. Paula's sister, whose name is Alicia, is now openly jubilant. She did not expect such a wonderful gift of fate, which allowed her, without making any effort, to get rid of her relative. But the main character decided not to leave without an answer. She turned her ugly face towards her house and addressed her younger sister. The girl told Alicia that she needed to take care of her beautiful face because it was the only thing she had in this life. After these words, the girl quickened her pace and quickly headed towards the mysterious stranger's carriage in order to get into it as quickly as possible. At that moment, the main character thought about what awaits her in the new place where she is now heading. It is unknown for now. Maybe it will be even worse there than here. But the hope for a better life does not leave the girl, because she is sick of this hell. The road to the estate of Count Vincent Bellunita took several hours. The girl enjoyed riding in a comfortable carriage. This had never happened to her before. When the carriage arrived at its destination, the main character took her suitcase and, accompanied by a mysterious stranger, headed to the Bellunita family estate. The guest was greeted by the estate manager, who has been working here for many years and has a wealth of experience in this field. She looked at the main character carefully and tried to assess her at first glance. After that, the manager asked the mysterious stranger, who turned out to be Count Bellunita's servant, who this girl was. Count Vincent's assistant greeted the manager politely and said that from that day on, this girl would personally serve Mr. Bellunite. The experienced and strict woman looked at the main character carefully. She tries to compare the facts and figure out whether the girl is suitable for such a responsible and difficult job. Paula felt the manager's gaze on her. This confused the girl a little. She was confused and hid her unattractive face under the brim of her elegant hat. Thus passed several agonizing seconds, which made the main character nervous. When the manager of the estate Bellunita satisfied her curiosity, she said in an even voice that she understood everything. After that, the woman silently turned around and went somewhere. The count's assistant followed the manager. The main character does not understand what to do next. No one explained anything to her. The girl was a little confused, but immediately pulled herself together and followed the workers of this house, who would now show and explain everything to her. The main character started to panic because it was her first time in such a luxurious house. She had to work here, but she didn't know anything about the profession of a maid. This made the girl a little nervous. A few minutes later, the strict woman introduced herself to the main character and said that her name was Isabella. She managed the work of the female servants here. After that, Pola changed into a maid's uniform and followed the manager. Isabella brought the girl to some beautiful doors and asked her what she could do. The main character answered that she knew how to clean the house, could wash, cook, and could write, read, and count a little. The manager listened attentively to her subordinate and said again that she understood everything. But to be able to count money and effectively manage the household, considerable practice would be needed. The main character noticed that Isabella had taken her outside and they were walking through the park to another building. The girl asked if she wouldn't be working at Count Belunit's main estate. The manager replied that Pola would be Count Vincent Belunita's personal maid. He would be in the full care of the main character, so she would have to be with him at all times. This surprised the girl a little, but she continued to follow her boss. Pola doesn't show it, but deep down inside she's panicking. The girl has never served real aristocrats before. Is it really true? The main character is very afraid that she won't be able to cope with her duties as a personal maid. It can't be that the manager of the estate's workers decided to put an inexperienced girl in such an important and responsible position. Perhaps there is some mistake here. The main character decided to ask Isabella if she could handle such a difficult task as serving Count Vincent Belunit. The manager continues to walk calmly, not paying attention to the words of the frightened girl. After thinking for a moment, Isabella stopped and decided to have a thorough talk with Paula. She wants to convey important information to the girl that she needs to learn once and for all. The manager has a strong and authoritarian character, so she immediately got down to business. Isabella told the main character in a serious tone that from that day on she would be the only one looking after Vincent Belunita. There would be no other staff to help her. If she was not satisfied with something, she could leave the Count's estate right now. The strict and straightforward woman also added that the main character needs to forget about complaining. If she ever complains about something, she will definitely be severely punished for it. Paula listened carefully to her boss and immediately made a decision. She would stay at the estate and would be more accommodating and polite in the future, so as not to upset her masters. The main character and her boss approached the outbuilding. It is smaller in size than Belunit's estate, but this house is also quite spacious and beautiful. Isabella and Paula entered the outbuilding of the Belunita estate. The manager said that the building was staffed by the bare minimum of staff. That had been the custom for a long time. A few seconds later, the main character saw a large staircase that led to the second floor. Isabella began to climb the stairs, continuing to give various useful instructions. The girl also started to climb up the stairs. She looks around in surprise and examines the beautiful paintings that hang on the walls of the building. After a few minutes, the girl noticed that she was starting to lag behind her boss, so she quickened her steps. Otherwise, the manager might punish the girl. When the women reached the second floor, Isabella said she had one last very important remark to make. This was information that Paula should never forget. The manager looked her subordinate in the eye and said that she should always and everywhere keep her mouth shut. If the girl accidentally or intentionally told anyone about what she saw here, she would be severely punished. The main character listened attentively to her mistress and bowed respectfully to her. She said that she would always remember the instructions and orders of the manager. Isabella and her new subordinate stopped at the large door that led to Count Vincent's chambers. An awkward silence reigned. It became noticeable that the manager was also starting to get a little nervous. The main character is ready to enter this room. The girl does not know what will happen to her after this, but she is very determined. The main thing is that she does not have to return home. After a brief pause, Isabella knocked on the door, waiting for an answer. Once again, sweat broke out on the manager's face from excitement. The main character bowed her head in respect. She prepared to step over the threshold of this room and enter it to fight for her survival and high social status. The door opened and the manager addressed Count Vincent. Isabella said loudly that she was going to enter the room, so her master should not worry. The main character entered the Count's room and saw something unexpected. Pola looks at her master, who apparently is very ill. The young nobleman Vincent Belunita is sitting on his bed, covered with a not very fresh sheet. The young man has a strange look. When the maids entered the young Count's chambers, for some reason he immediately became aggressive and threw a cup of water at them, which smashed against the wall of his room. This act of the young man frightened the main character, who screamed in surprise and covered her head with her hands so that the shards of the broken cup did not hurt her. Isabella, unlike her subordinate, remains completely calm. She bowed respectfully to her master and asked him if he was awake. Vincent Belunita continues to sit on his bed, covered with a sheet. He looked at Isabella with disdain and told her to leave his chambers immediately. The young Count wants to be left completely alone, but the brave woman does not listen to her master and continues to insist on her own. The manager of the maids said that she would now bring a nutritious and healthy dinner for the young man. Vincent Belunita again told the maid to leave his room immediately. After this, the young man began to get nervous again and threw a small but beautiful vase of flowers that stood next to him at Isabella. The main character was frightened again and screamed loudly, but the manager remained calm and unshakable. Apparently, this experienced woman had already gotten used to her master's hysterical antics. After this, Isabella pointed to the main character and said that she had brought the young count a new servant who would look after him and carry out all his orders. The girl looked at Vincent Bellunita with confusion and said that she was very glad to meet her master. She expressed her readiness to always serve him and fulfill all his wishes, but the young count was at it again. He began to get nervous and order his maids to leave his chambers immediately. Isabella looked at her master carefully and decided to ease the tense situation a little. The experienced woman said that she would now bring dinner to her master. He should not worry so much. The manager and her subordinate took a few seconds off from the young count to coordinate their next steps. But Vincent Bellunite had enough time to get out the table knife he had previously stolen and hidden. The hysterical nobleman gripped the blade tightly in his hand. He was preparing to do something unpredictable and terrible. Perhaps now someone would pay with their life for carelessness. The main character talked to her boss and looked at the young count. The girl immediately noticed that the young man was holding a sharp object in his hand that looked like a table knife. Vincent Bellunita began to swing the knife in different directions without any system or purpose. The main character quickly went to the young count. The girl does not want that she accidentally hurt herself. Pola moves quickly. That's why she didn't notice that she stepped on the sheet that covered the young count's head. The girl tripped over this obstacle and fell on Vincent Bellunita. After that, the young people turned over on the floor. The young count found himself on top of his maid. He did not expect such a development of events, so he was a little surprised and confused. The table knife that was in Vincent's hands lies to the side. The main character looked at her master's face and froze in surprise. It hadn't been noticeable before, but apparently the young count had poor eyesight, and tears were constantly running down his cheeks. Vincent Bellunita also got a close look at the main character's face, and he really didn't like it. The young count even leaned back to be away from such an ugly girl. After this, the young man looked around to find his table knife, which he had just dropped from his hand. The main character lies completely motionless. The girl silently watches as the young nobleman unsuccessfully gropes around her with his hands to find the table knife he dropped. But Vincent Bellunita is unable to do anything. Therefore, Pola felt a sense of pity for this unfortunate young man. Things got to the point where the young man started touching his maid's face with his hands. He has poor eyesight, so at that moment the girl thought about how her master could see her ugly face. It remained a mystery to her. Vincent Bellunita continued his unsuccessful search for a table knife and began to feel the main character's face more vigorously. The girl did not like this at all, and she decided that something urgently needed to be done. So the main character gathered her strength and pushed the young nobleman away from her. It turned out that the girl had enough strength for this. Meanwhile, the manager Isabella stands nearby and watches everything that is happening now. She was able to appreciate the agility and reaction of the main character. Pola hastened to apologize to the young man for pushing him. Only now did Isabella approach her master and help him stand up so that he could move back to his bed. The main character looked at Vincent Bellunita again and thought that something very strange was happening to his eyes. The girl had the impression that they were bewitched by some terrible black magic. From the outside, it is noticeable that the young nobleman's eyes are constantly watering and have some strange cloudiness that does not allow him to see well. The main character is sitting on the floor after a confrontation with Vincent Bellunita. She is watching the young aristocrat closely, who Isabella is now trying to put to bed. But the manager overestimated her strength and capabilities. She tried to calm her master down and failed. Vincent Bellunita began to show aggression and push again. According to the storyline, Vincent Bellunita is the only son of the famous couple, the Counts Bellunita. This young aristocrat stood out from childhood for his beauty and sharp mind. When Vincent Bellunita's parents died tragically in a catastrophe, those around him feared that the young count would not be able to hold on to power and his estates would be ruined. But things turned out differently. He overcame the difficulties and raised his prestige to the skies. But one day, a terrible tragedy befell the young aristocrat, which changed his entire future life and brought him a huge number of various misfortunes. It all started at a royal reception. An assassin sneaked in, dressed as a servant who works for the family. Someone ordered the murder of Vincent Bellunita, but the royal guard intervened in time. Therefore, the mercenary was neutralized by the guards, and the young count's wound was only superficial. But another problem arose that changed the future life of the young man. The killer managed to spray a dangerous substance, with which the young count interacted for some time. The poison was absorbed into Vincent Bellunita's body, which led to his severe poisoning. The young nobleman's eyes suffered especially. At first, they simply stung slightly, and Vincent Bellunite thought that nothing serious was happening to them. But over time, the boy's condition only worsened. The young aristocrat's gaze began to cloud over and become covered with some strange film. Vincent Bellunita eventually stopped distinguishing the outlines of objects and people. One day, that terrible day came when the young man realized that he could no longer see anything, and the sunlight had gone out for him forever. The inhabitants of the kingdom learned that the famous Vincent Bellunita had locked himself in his room and no longer left his house. Only the butler who brought the main character to the estate, Isabella, the house manager, and Pola, who is to become Vincent Bellunita's personal maid, know about the true state of health of the young count. No one else knows anything about what is happening to the poisoned young man. Even the servants who work in the Bellunite family estate and do not visit the outbuilding know nothing and try not to stick their noses where they do not belong. The duties of the main character, who was hired as a personal servant, include fulfilling all the orders and wishes of the young master. The girl also needs to ensure that the young count does not cause himself any harm and maintain complete silence about everything that happens to him. Pola has started to do her job, but Vincent Bellunita is in a state of deep depression. That's why he doesn't eat food and throws it around the room. The girl, keeping calm, cleans and washes everything. The young count constantly sits on his bed, covering his head with a blanket. And the main character tries to convince him to eat. But the young man refuses the food and drives the girl out of his room. But the main character continues to work hard. In any case, such hard work will be much better than returning to the cruel tyrant who dares to call himself Paula's father. Vincent Bellunita's eyes are constantly sore and watery. This causes him unbearable pain and discomfort, which makes the young aristocrat nervous and takes out his aggression on the people around him. The main character calmly collected the food scattered around the room and told her charge that he needed to take a bath, and that it wouldn't hurt to change the bed linen on his bed now. But the girl's admonitions had no effect on the young nobleman. Vincent Bellunita began to show aggression towards his personal maid again. He shouted at the main character and ordered her to leave the room immediately and leave him alone. The personal maid decided to ask the young aristocrat directly why he was yelling at her so loudly. Maybe Vincent Bellunite just didn't like Pola. To this, the young nobleman answered the main character that he really didn't like her. Therefore, the girl should immediately leave the room and close the door behind her. And she should also make sure that the young man forgot about her forever. The maid continues to tidy up her master's room. The girl listened to Vincent Bellunita and asked him what exactly he didn't like about her. The young man replied that he didn't like absolutely everything. The main character again listened calmly and attentively to the young count and said that she would do everything possible to please her master. The girl added that any problem can be solved. There would be a desire. Vincent Bellunita did not listen to his maid any longer. He became aggressive again and said that he did not need the girl's services and began to throw Pola out of his room again. The main character turned around to look at the young aristocrat who had shown her disrespect again. She thought it would be a good idea to hit this capricious young man with something hard and heavy. Pola remembered that today, Vincent Bellunita had already broken several plates and glasses, trying to hit the girl with them. She thought that she had every moral right to respond to the capricious young man in the same way. The aristocrat guessed what his maid was thinking and threatened her with death if she decided to hit him. The main character decided to continue to pretend that she was ready to tolerate the whims of the nobleman and said that he was wrong. After that, Pola asked Vincent Bellunita to move a little so that she could change the bed linen on his bed. But nothing good came of it because the capricious aristocrat threw a heavy table clock at the girl, which hit her right on the head. It's just awful. The main character stoically withstood this insidious blow. She screamed loudly in pain but remained standing on her feet without losing consciousness. The heavy watch fell to the floor and broke. And now Paula will have another bruise. But she is no stranger to beatings because she lived with a tyrannical father who constantly beat her for the slightest mistake. After the cruel blow of the heavy watch, in one moment the girl's brain again came alive and reminded of itself the terrible ghosts of the past. She remembered her father, who constantly mocked his defenseless daughter. A few seconds later, the main character came to her senses. She stands and looks at the broken watch that lies near her feet. This broken thing reminded the girl of her twisted and worthless life, which was never worth a single penny. But this time, something turned over in the girl's mind, who was tired of receiving undeserved beatings from the people around her. The main character also felt a strange feeling that now she had nothing to lose and fear. The girl took a deep breath to calm down her negative emotions and bent down to pick up the broken watch that was lying on the floor. The main character looked closely at the fragments of the mutilated dial and thought again about her past life, which always seemed to her like a real hell on earth. Because of her ugly face, Paula was always called a useless girl who would never be able to get married and have children. People around her always laughed at the main character and humiliated her in every possible way. The guys from the girl's home village never saw her as an object of adoration. The young men only grimaced and reminded the main character of her ugliness. The younger sister, Alicia, always hated Paula for her unattractive appearance. This did not contribute to the popularity of the pretty girl among her peers. She said that the main character should only go out with her face covered, so as not to irritate others. Paula stopped reminiscing about her past life and picked up the broken watch. The girl turned to her master and said that he did not need to throw heavy objects at her. It was enough to simply say if he was not happy with something. Vincent Bellunita laughed loudly and brazenly when he heard his maid's answer. The capricious nobleman told the girl that she was afraid of dying, so she did not answer him frankly, that she would like to hit him with something in return. After that, the young aristocrat added that there were many lonely and unhappy girls like her in the area, and if you kill such a girl, no one will even remember her. The main character should always remember this. Vincent Bellunita told his maid the whole truth. The nobleman said that the girl was hired to work at the count's estate not because she had outstanding abilities. The whole point is that if anything happens, the main character can be killed without consequences and the body hidden. Pola looks at her aggressive master carefully. She has seen a lot in this life, and it has always been only troubles and suffering. The girl knows that it can be very easy to judge another person. You can endlessly exalt yourself at the expense of others, condemning and destroying them. But the main character, over the years she lived with her tyrannical father, developed moral immunity to people of this type. They no longer frighten or offend her. The main character took another deep breath and exhaled to extinguish her negative emotions and get rid of the excess adrenaline in her blood. Now the girl came to her senses and is ready to continue her work. Paula looked at her master carefully and calmly told him that he was a terrible, rude man and a bully. But for a famous aristocrat, this young man lived very dirty, so it would not hurt him to change the bed linen on his bed. Vincent Bellunita listened to his interlocutor and got furious again. He said that the miserable servant must watch her tongue. Otherwise, she could soon lose it. The proud aristocrat is very pleased with his advantageous position. The weak girl will not be able to do anything to him in response if he decides to humiliate or insult her. But the main character turned out to be a tough nut to crack. She replied that she was absolutely not afraid of death. If the gentleman wanted to kill her, let him do it quickly, so that the girl would not suffer. There was a tense silence. Paula hastened to reassure the young count that he had nothing to fear. The girl was ready to die at any moment, so she did not want to cause suffering to others, especially not to her employer. The main character added that she has nothing to lose except her life. But it is worthless. Therefore, death does not scare her at all. The only thing that can scare her is the hopelessness of life in her home with her father, who constantly mocks her. But she will never return there. The young count calmed down a little. He listened attentively to his interlocutor and felt something like pity for her. But in the soul of Vincent Bellunita, another vague feeling awoke. For a moment, it seemed to him that he and this girl were similar in some way. After that, something unexpected happened. The main character asked the young gentleman for forgiveness, went to his bed, and abruptly tore off the sheet he always wrapped himself in. Vincent Bellunita fell to the floor. The young aristocrat had not yet had time to come to his senses and understand what exactly had just happened to him. When the owner of the estate came to his senses a little, he asked the main character what she was doing now. The girl immediately answered her master that she was trying to change the bed linen on his bed at the moment. After that, the main character calmly approached Vincent Bellunite, who was lying on the floor and in a state of shock. The young count could not understand what his maid was going to do now, but everything turned out to be very simple. The main character began to unbutton the buttons on her master's dirty shirt to change him into clean clothes. This surprised Vincent Bellunita even more than before. The young count realized that they wanted to change him into new clothes. But the nobleman did not want this, so he began to resist the actions of his persistent maid. At this point, the girl decided to show the young man her strong character. She grabbed Vincent Bellunita firmly by the collar and said that she saw no reason to walk around in dirty clothes. The girl also asked the young man if he was such an important gentleman that she couldn't even touch him. Vincent Bellunita lost this battle. His resistance had absolutely no effect, so the maid managed to take off his dirty shirt. After this, the main character was very happy and decided to look at her young master. The girl is interested in how he will now react to her proactive behavior. Paula looked closely at Vincent Bellunita, who had been locked up for 6 months, blind and poorly fed. The girl did not like what she saw now. In front of the main character sits a skinny young man with a naked torso. His body is covered with abrasions, bruises, and scratches. Vincent Bellunita looks very bad. When the dressing process was over, the main character met with the house manager, Isabella. The girl said that she wanted to hide all the things that were in the young gentleman's room somewhere. Then he would not throw them at the people around him. The manager listened carefully to her subordinate and thought about her proposal. Everything is not as simple as it may seem at first glance. Isabella told the girl to leave everything as it was. One day, she removed all the things from the master's room. This led to terrible consequences. He began to mutilate himself in revenge for this. Aggression always needs some outlet. The main character can't believe her ears. The girl can't believe that such a thing is even possible. But it turns out that aggressive people are very inventive in various ways of causing injury. When Paula returned to her master's room, she saw that the young count was trying to scratch his face to relieve the emotional tension. The main character calmly approached Vincent Bellunite and stopped him from acting rashly. The young aristocrat, surprisingly, listened to his maid and did not resist. The girl gently stroked her master's scratched cheek so that it would not hurt him so much, and looked closely into the young man's clouded eyes. The main character sees that this young and once strong aristocrat suffers greatly from physical and mental torment. The girl is very upset that she cannot help her unfortunate master in any way now. At this moment, the maid can only diligently perform her duties to make the young count's life easier. The girl placed fresh and clean clothes near Vincent Bellunita and told him about it. While the young count was changing his clothes, the main character decided to once again make up the bed of her master, who had not slept in a clean bed for a long time. The main character returned to the young count and noticed that he had already changed his clothes. But the girl thought that Vincent Bellunita had done it too quickly. Maybe he had missed something in the process of changing. Paula noticed that the young count had only changed his pants, but his underwear remained untouched. This surprised the girl greatly. The maid told her master that he needed to change his underwear too. There was no one and nothing to be ashamed of here. But Vincent Bellunita covered his head with the sheet again and told the girl to leave his room immediately. He didn't want to see her. The main character's nerves began to give way. She said that dirty underwear is a real abomination. A real aristocrat should always be clean, fresh, and tidy. Suddenly, Vincent Bellunita peeked out from under the sheet he had covered himself with. The young count had gotten hold of a revolver somewhere, and now he was threatening the main character with it. The young man said that Paula had to leave the room immediately. Otherwise, he would shoot her on the spot. The girl did not expect such a development of events. She is now very scared and in a state of complete shock. Vincent Bellunita holds his revolver to his maid's forehead. One shot is enough for him to get rid of the annoying girl forever. The main character asked the young count not to do anything stupid, but this time everything went well. The girl survived because she quickly left the gentleman's room and did not return to him that day. But this turned into a kind of tradition. If Vincent Bellunita wanted the main character to leave him, he immediately grabbed his pistol. Over time, the main character became so accustomed to this treatment that she began to find it funny and amusing. But at night, when Paula was alone in her room, she was very angry with the young count for interfering with her duties. So the girl took out her anger on her pillow. One day, the main character learned from one of the maids that she was already the 10th personal maid of the young count. The previous girls either quit of their own free will or suddenly disappeared somewhere. Paula felt that her life was hanging by a thread at the moment. Isabella was not happy that the main character could not find a way to fulfill her duties to the fullest extent. The girl stands in the dark corridor of Bellunita's estate and mourns her terrible fate. Soon she too will disappear without a trace, like the other personal maids of the young master. The main character thought about Vincent Belluni. She imagined the young gentleman sitting alone in his room and unable to decide on the last step into eternity. But the girl thought that she needed to gather her strength and save this young man. In this way, the main character would save not only her master, who was not always like this, but also herself. Paula learned from other maids that Vincent Bellunita had not always been in such a terrible psychological state. At first, even after losing his sight, the young count tried to live his normal life. But it was until several incidents occurred that knocked the young man out of his usual routine completely. The first incident occurred at a market square in the village. When Vincent Bellunita went out for a walk in some fresh country air, another attempt was made on his life. The vigilant guard prevented the worst from happening, and the young count remained alive again. The hired killer turned out to be a young man who tried to plunge a dagger into the aristocrat's chest. The saddest thing was that this mercenary did not have time to name the person who ordered the murder. He was able to commit suicide when he was detained by the guards. The next attempt on Vincent Bellunita's life took place in the garden of the count's estate. When the young nobleman's servant came running to the piercing cry for help, he saw a terrible picture. Vincent Bellunita stands all smeared with the blood of his enemy, who lies next to him, dead, with an iron rod in his chest. But the aristocrat remains safe and sound. The young count looks at his servant in confusion. He is in a state of shock and does not know what to say now. The third attempt on the count's life took place at the dinner table in his own estate. A hired killer dared to poison the food during a celebration. But everything turned out well. There were other attempts on his life, one after another. The series of these sad and frightening incidents broke the spirit of Vincent Bellunita. He decided that he should withdraw far away from the world and the cruel people who lived in it. Gradually, the young count developed a real paranoia, which prevented him from eating normally, sleeping, communicating with other people, working, and going out. The young count began to quickly sink into a deep depression, which gradually took possession of his entire being. Vincent Bellunita's blindness began to progress even faster. And one day, the unfortunate young count found himself completely alone, shrouded in impenetrable darkness. The main character's room adjoins the young nobleman's bedchamber. The girl woke up in the middle of the night from her master's loud groans. This happens to him very often. The girl placed her hand on the wall of the room to better feel the vibrations of the sound waves that were coming from the bedroom of the young aristocrat. The main character felt with her tender, girlish hand how the thin wall was shaking from the painful moans of Vincent Bellunita. The young count was suffering greatly from mental and physical pain, and no one was able to help him now. It was terrible. The main character sat on her bed and thought. She thinks about the young gentleman who is suffering a lot now. But the girl understands that Vincent Bellunita does not give up without a fight. He entered into a desperate duel with death, which has no slaves. It's morning the next day. Paula has changed into her maid uniform. She is preparing for a very hard day of work after a sleepless night. The main character came out of her room and suddenly heard that there was someone in the young master's chambers. The girl decided to listen to the conversation coming from Vincent Bellunita's room. It turned out that the young gentleman had been visited by his butler, who handles all the affairs of the Bellunet family estate. Such a report takes place every morning. The main character had overheard such reports several times, standing behind the door. The girl noticed that Vincent Bellunita changed when he was busy with the affairs of his estate. It was as if he came to life again and returned to his former appearance as a healthy person. Paula loves these moments very much because she likes to watch her master, who again becomes cheerful, reasonable, and sane for a short time. The main character immediately begins to imagine what kind of business suit she would dress her master in. And then Vincent Bellunita would be able to instantly solve all the problems that had accumulated in his household. When the butler's morning report was finished, he walked out into the corridor with dignity, not even paying attention to his master's personal maid. The main character bowed respectfully to the manager. The girl thought that she was just an insignificant servant who could be replaced at any moment, and that would be worse than the pistol with which the young count constantly threatened her. The main character entered the room of a young aristocrat. She must change the gentleman's bed linen, but this time the girl needs to think of something. Otherwise, she will be fired. Paula took hold of the blanket that covered the young gentleman's head to change it. But Vincent Bellunita began to threaten the girl with his revolver again. This time everything will be different. That's what the main character decided, because she has nothing left to lose except her life, which is worth nothing. The girl told the young gentleman not to deny himself anything and to shoot her calmly. The main character added that it would be an honor for her to be shot by Count Vincent Bellunita himself. Therefore, the young count can pull the trigger of his pistol to end this whole story. Paula looks boldly into the eyes of her master, who does not dare to pull the trigger. The girl said that in this case, she will continue to change the bed linen. After this, the main character resolutely began to carry out her direct duties, paying no attention to Vincent Bellunita, who did not shoot her with his pistol. The young count began to protest again and throw his maid out of the room. But the main character did not give in to the provocations of the young gentleman and said that she would leave his chambers only after changing the bed linen. After that, the girl asked Vincent Bellunita to move over so that he would not interfere with her work. The young man realized that he would not be able to get anything from his maid and fell exhausted onto his bed. Apparently, the young count resigned himself to the fact that his bed linen would be changed. A few minutes later, the main character brought Vincent Bellunite a plate of delicious and nutritious food that she had prepared for him today. Such unheard of impudence drove the young aristocrat into a rage. While he could somehow come to terms with changing the bed linen, he had problems with fresh food. Vincent Bellunita began waving his pistol again and threatening the maid. The girl said that the master would not be able to hit her because he was blind. The young count replied that he had always been the best shot in the area. The main character listens attentively to her interlocutor and stirs the soup that she cooked for her master. Vincent Bellunita pointed his revolver at the maid, but the girl did not lose her head. She filled a spoon with soup and told the young count to open his mouth. The main character will feed the young man with a spoon. Vincent Bellunita found the idea funny. The last time he ate from a spoon was a long time ago, when he was a small child. That's how his mother fed him. But the hysterical count decided to play a nasty trick on his maid. He kicked the soup plate with all his might, and it flew to the other end of the room. At the same time, the young nobleman smiled maliciously. The main character continues to maintain stoic calm. She has noticed out of the corner of her eye where the bowl of soup fell, but she does not lose sight of her capricious charge. The girl remembered her past life in the house of her cruel father. There were times when Polya had to dig through garbage all day to find even a grain of something edible. The main character pressed her lips tightly together to keep from cursing at the capricious nobleman who was so thoughtlessly throwing away healthy and tasty food. The girl thought that this sick man was almost unsympathetic and unsympathetic. He was so harmful and toxic. After this, Paula steeled herself and asked the capricious nobleman if he was afraid of her or if there was some other reason for his bad behavior. Perhaps it was time to have a heart-to-heart talk. The main character added that she would never stoop to poisoning anyone. It was not her method. Vincent Bellunita asked the girl what she was planning now. Paula decided to fulfill her direct official duties at any cost. The girl has nothing to lose. There is still soup left in the spoon she is holding in her hand. Therefore, the girl will make the capricious nobleman eat it no matter what. Vincent Bellunita was very frightened by the actions of his maid. During the time that the young man spent locked up, he managed to develop a strong paranoia. The nobleman constantly thinks that they want to poison him. Therefore, he does not eat. But this time, the main character acts decisively. The girl forces the young count to eat a spoonful of soup so that he can be sure that the food is absolutely safe. At this moment, Vincent Bellunite no longer cares about his gun. He has a severe panic attack and a psychological crisis, which the main character wants to break. The girl inserted her fingers into the mouth of the frightened count to open his mouth and force him to eat soup. The main character is so determined that the young nobleman is even afraid to resist her. One more small effort on the girl's part, and the desired goal would be achieved. She forced her master's mouth open and fed him soup from a spoon. This is victory. In this situation, the main character had to strike while the iron was still hot. The girl took the second bowl of soup and immediately continued feeding Vincent Bellunita with a spoon. This ended in complete success. The young count was able to realize that no one was going to poison him now. Vincent Bellunita continues to eat the delicious and nutritious soup that his personal maid feeds him with a spoon. This is great progress for the young count, who fears that he could be poisoned at any moment. After some time, the young count came to his senses a little and began to resist, pushing the main character away from him. But the girl continues to feed the gentleman, saying that food and care should be appreciated. The main character squeezed Vincent Bellunita's neck tightly and said that as a child, the young count should have been told by his teachers and parents that he should behave decently and not throw food around the room. But the young gentleman still managed to gather his strength and break free from the strong grip of his personal maid. With one powerful effort, Vincent Bellunita threw the maid who forced him to eat from a spoon to the floor. After this, the young man's paranoia worsened again. The aristocrat thought he had been poisoned. He grabbed his throat, feeling a phantom pain he had imagined. Vincent Bellunita wheezed to his maid that she was fired. But the girl smiled and said that she had made her master eat after all. She had done her duty. The young nobleman continued to threaten the main character with quick reprisals, promising that the maid would be punished today. But Pola turned out to be not a timid girl. The main character rose to her feet from the floor, bowed to her master, and said that nothing bad would happen to her because no one had seen anything. These words puzzled the capricious nobleman. Vincent Bellunita reached for his revolver to shoot this impudent girl who dared to say and do very impudent things about her master. This problem must be solved immediately. The young count continues to look for his pistol, feeling the bed with his hands. The main character stands calmly next to her. She told the young gentleman that he has a revolver and he can calmly kill her. Nothing will happen to him for it. But there is one problem. The girl thinks that this gun is not loaded. The main character hastened to announce this to her master. Vincent Bellunita did not expect such a turn of events. The young count stopped frantically searching for his revolver and looked with his clouded gaze in the direction of his personal maid. After that, the young nobleman pushed his pistol off the bed, and it fell with a thud onto the floor of the count's chambers. The girl was right. There were no cartridges in the revolver at all. Vincent Bellunita continues to sit on his bed. The nobleman is silently pondering what to say to the perceptive girl who has called his bluff. The main character stands calmly by her master's bed. The girl is quite pleased with herself and today's meeting with her ward. She managed to correct the situation and make the young aristocrat eat. After that, the girl smiled sincerely and said that she would be very happy if the young gentleman ate well next time. It would bring him new strength and restore his health. Vincent Bellunita said that the main character was fired and that she must immediately find another girl to replace her as the young count's personal maid. Pola replied that the young aristocrat could decide as he pleased. It was his right. The girl thought for a moment and added that there had been various rumors about the young count lately, so it would be very difficult for him to find a new maid who would take care of him and tolerate all his whims. The main character bent down to pick up her master's favorite revolver. After that, she said that Vincent Bellunita did not need to worry. Pola would not leave the sick count until she was replaced. The girl looked closely at her charge and said that she was used to fulfilling her duties to the end and never stopping halfway. The main character took her master's revolver in her hand and said that she would stay with him forever if she could not find a worthy replacement. Therefore, Vincent Bellunita had better gradually get used to her person, who would always be by his side. After that, the main character approached the young count and returned his favorite revolver, which turned out to be just a useless toy. The girl said that she would always be near her master if he needed her. Vincent Bellunita looks at his subordinate attentively, and he can't believe that all this is really happening. The young count felt like a helpless child next to his maid, who has a strong character. In turn, the main character felt like a professional boxer who won a very difficult and responsible fight for the title of absolute champion in all possible versions. Vincent Bellunita got not only a psychological knockout today, but also an important life lesson. Appearances can be deceiving. The young aristocrat should not quarrel with his personal maid again, because she turned out to be stronger than him. The main character felt a surge of new strength and energy to continue the fight for her survival. The girl again wants to help her master restore his health and former power. Gradually, Pola began to encounter less and less resistance from her master when she fed him with a spoon. The girl praises the young count for the fact that she began to eat well. There are also fewer problems with changing the bed linen on the young gentleman's bed. Today, the main character must make Vincent Bellunita wash himself. But this is a very difficult task. The young count tries with all his might to escape from the tenacious and trained hands of his personal maid, but he fails. All attempts of the young nobleman to avoid water procedures today will end in failure. So decided the main character. The brave and strong-willed girl continues to insist on her own. She is determined to bathe Vincent Bellunita today so that he is clean, fresh, and renewed. The main character has successfully completed her duties as a maid, but such difficult tasks as today often have sad consequences for the girl. The young count accidentally kicked the maid in the face and broke her nose. Now Pola is standing in the hallway trying to stop the bleeding. Before the girl had time to go out into the corridor to attend to her injury, the house manager immediately appeared and asked the maid what she was doing there and what had happened to her. Isabella approached the main character and examined her carefully. The manager looked sympathetically at her subordinate and said that she had important news for the girl. The house manager thought for a moment to collect her thoughts and said that at first she had very carefully selected the girls for the position of the young master's personal maid. But all of them had turned out to be not strong and resilient enough for this difficult job. For various reasons, the people brought to serve Vincent Bellunite were not suitable for him. Therefore, it was necessary to continue searching for worthy servants. Then bad rumors about the young count began to spread around the area. This led to the fact that no one wanted to work at the Bellunite estate anymore. So Isabella had to hire an inexperienced girl who had nothing to lose in this life. The main character listens attentively to the house manager and cannot understand what she is leading to. Now Isabella will either punish the girl for some misdeed or tell her something very important that will determine her future fate in this house. Finally, Isabella summed up her speech and said that as long as nothing threatens the health and life of Vincent Bellunita, she completely entrusts the care of the young gentleman to the main character. The girl passed the probationary period and was finally hired. The main character did not expect such a turn of events. She is now standing in the hallway with a broken nose from which blood is flowing. The girl thought that her life was now hanging by a thread and she would soon be fired. But everything turned out completely differently. A new day has dawned. Pola stands outside her master's room, a pillow in her hand. She braces herself for another battle with the young count to bathe him again. It will be a hard day. The girl opened the door and entered Vincent Bellunita's room, covering her face with a pillow. The main character said that she was not going to give up so easily. But today, Vincent Bellunita would take a bath. But something went wrong, as always. The girl expected the young gentleman to throw something at her, as he always does. But nothing happened. Something is wrong here. The main character looked at her master from behind her improvised protection. It turned out that the young count was lying in his bed and not moving. Maybe something had happened. She needed to check it out immediately. Pola threw the pillow and quickly went to Vincent Bellunita's bed. The girl is afraid that something bad happened to the young gentleman while he was sleeping, or that he caused himself some injuries incompatible with life. The main character ran up to the young man who was writhing in excruciating pain. Something had happened to the young count, but the girl couldn't understand what exactly was happening to him. A few seconds later, the girl realized that the young count was having a hard time breathing. He was suffocating right before the main character's eyes. For this case, Paula has a special inhaler, which was given to him by Vincent Bellunita's attending physician. The main character found an inhaler in her uniform pocket and remembered how the doctor instructed her. The maid knows how to use this device and in what cases to use it. Paula forced her master's mouth open and inserted the inhaler. The girl tried to calm the young count down so that he wouldn't twitch or resist too much. Now Vincent Bellunite just needs to breathe evenly, and everything will be fine. Despite the panic and pain that gripped the young count, he listened to his personal maid and began to follow all her instructions. Gradually, Vincent Bellunita's breathing began to improve and even out. The young count calmed down a little and came to his senses. The youth opened his clouded eyes and tried to look at his savior. The main character hugged her protege and hurried to calm him down. The girl said that everything would be fine with the young aristocrat now. He just needed to rest a little to gain new strength. The young man began to act up again. Vincent Bellunita began to push away his savior and chase her out of his own chambers. Shame, pain, and joy of unexpected salvation were now mixed in his soul. After this, the young count fell exhausted on his bed and covered his face with his hand. He hates himself for his helplessness and blindness. The girl is next to her master and watches him closely. Vincent Bellunita has started to chase away his savior again. He doesn't want to owe anything to this pitiful and insignificant, in his opinion, servant. But the main character decided to show her character again and said that she would leave her young master's room only after he had dined. This was not even up for discussion. The young count began to breathe normally again, so he covered his head with a sheet so as not to see the main character. But the girl said that the young gentleman's doctor prescribed him a stable diet for a speedy recovery and restoration of strength. The main character said that she would not let Vincent Bellunite die, no matter how hard he tried to starve himself or harm himself in any other way. You have to fight for your life to the end, no matter what happens. After that, Paula added that she was not going to sit back and do nothing. She would do what she could at the moment while she still had that power. The main character noticed that her broom was standing near the wall, so the girl decided to use this tool right away and bring sterile order to the young count's chambers. As they say, cleanliness is the key to health. The girl calmly began cleaning her master's room. Vincent Bellunita lies on his bed and realizes that his personal maid is still there. The young count hears the sounds of the broom and the measured steps of the main character. Vincent Bellunita thought for a moment and asked his maid why she was still there and did not leave. The main character stopped her work of cleaning the room for a moment and thought. The girl realized that the young gentleman spoke to her in a normal tone for the first time. For a split second, Vincent Bellunita reminded the girl of a wild kitten who had gradually begun to get used to his new owner and stopped behaving aggressively. After some time, the young count repeated his question as to why the girl still did not leave him. The main character answered that she needed money, so she did not give up this difficult job. Vincent Bellunita asked the girl again if she would leave if the nobleman gave her enough money. The main character smiled meaningfully and asked the gentleman why he wanted to offer her money to leave him once and for all. The girl thought for a moment and added that she didn't need money. She would just wait until another maid came to take her place. After that, the main character would definitely quit and leave the young count in complete peace. Vincent Bellunita lies on his bed with his eyes closed and in pain. He said that he would fire all the maids who would work for him. After a pause, the young count asked his personal maid where she lived before she came to the Bellunita estate. The main character replied that she used to live in a small town called Filton. It is located not far from the Earl's estate, behind the neighboring mountain. Pola continued cleaning the room and talking to her young master. The main character said that she really enjoyed the ride in the count's luxurious carriage. This had never happened to her before. The girl really liked the road to these places. It seemed simply incredible to her. The main character will never forget this event in her life. When the main character was riding in a luxurious carriage, she imagined that she was a fairy tale princess who lived in a real romantic story. She had heard that such stories were printed in books. The girl continues to sweep the young count's room. She thought for a moment and said that, unfortunately, reality is very different from the romantic fairy tale, where good always triumphs over evil. But according to Paula, this is not yet a reason to give up and fold your hands helplessly. The girl believes that you need to fight for your happiness until the very end. The main character told her interlocutor that she can read and has read many fairy tales in her short life. The girl learned this when she worked in a bookstore, where there was a very kind and educated owner. Vincent Bellunita continues to lie on his bed with his eyes open. He listens attentively to the girl and does not believe what he is hearing now. Could it be that this pathetic servant can read and knows many fairy tales? The main character was a little lost in her dreams. She said that she remembered some quotes from her favorite books by heart. The girl closed her eyes and remembered one of her favorite fairy tales. Paula spoke in a soulful voice her favorite inspirational quote from a fairy tale that she remembered for the rest of her life. This greatly surprised Vincent Bellunita, but something unexpected happened. The young count said the title of the tale out loud when he heard only one quote from it. He had read the story too and liked it very much. After that, Vincent Bellunita said that the main character does not have a very good taste, because this story is a sad tragedy. It is better to read funny stories now. The main character listened attentively to her master and completely agreed with him. The girl thought for a while and said that, indeed, this fairy tale has a very sad ending. The main character put the mop back in its place when she finished cleaning. Meanwhile, Vincent Bellunita said that he really liked the ending of the story, where the girl is left alone and simply forgets about those who abandoned and betrayed her. Pola finished cleaning the room and asked the young count what kind of books he liked. This topic is very interesting for the main character. She feels that Vincent Bellunita also likes romantic stories. The young owner of the estate was silent for a while and sadly said that he no longer read. The main character immediately realized that she had asked the blind count a very stupid and tactless question. The girl urgently needs to come up with something to get out of this stupid situation she put herself in. Otherwise, Vincent Bellunita will close in on himself again and will not want to talk to the main character anymore. Paula quickly realized that there were books that blind people could read and told her interlocutor about it. The young count replied that such books existed, but there were far fewer of them than the usual publications for sighted people. The main character said that they could hire someone to read books out loud to Vincent Bellunita. The young count replied that he did not want the entire kingdom to know what state he was in. This information had to be kept secret. The girl listened to her master and thought that it was very difficult for her to please such a picky and capricious aristocrat. The main character thought for a while and came up with a great idea. The girl suggested to the young count that she read him books every day. This would be a great way to entertain the young aristocrat. Vincent Bellunita was at first very surprised by such an unexpected offer, but then he agreed with it. The girl did not put this matter off for long and immediately began reading books aloud to the young gentleman. The main character is very nervous. Pola hopes that Vincent Bellunita will behave quietly and calmly when she reads. But the capricious count remained true to his habits. He immediately began to be naughty and indignant when the main character began to read aloud a book that he did not like. The girl answered the young nobleman that she had only managed to read one line from the book, but Vincent Bellunita said that he did not like that line. Therefore, the maid would have to take another book. The main character did not argue with her protégé and said that she would fulfill his wish and take another romantic story to read aloud. Vincent Bellunita rejected this book too when he heard the first line read aloud by the maid. He said that the main character had a talent for choosing boring and uninteresting books. Paula listened attentively to her master's unfounded claims and began to be indignant. The girl said that the young aristocrat was simply not objective towards her and was picking on her for no reason. Vincent Bellunita lies on his bed, hugging a pillow. The young nobleman said that he sees nothing wrong with telling the main character the pure truth, but the girl cannot understand how a young aristocrat can determine the quality of a story if he has not even read it. But Vincent Bellunita replied that he has read enough books to judge objectively. The young count added that a pathetic and insignificant servant girl should not argue with an educated aristocrat who had been taught by the best teachers in the entire kingdom. The main character listened carefully to her master's arguments and said that she felt like a small mouse that had fallen into the clutches of a big cat. Only a vile individual would take advantage of his position to offend a weaker person. Pola thought for a moment and decided to bring other books. The girl asked Vincent Bellunita to tell her which stories he liked the most. The young count replied that he never rereads what he had already read. The main character asked what genre of stories her master liked. But Vincent Bellunita said that he didn't like any genre. He was a man of mood. The young count lies in bed, and his personal maid has gone to the estate library to bring new books. Vincent Bellunita wants everyone to leave him alone and give him the opportunity to be alone with his thoughts. The girl returned a few minutes later, bringing new books with her. Vincent Bellunita told his maid to go away because he wanted to be alone. The heroine smiled and told the young gentleman that he could continue to act like a little child, but she would read books out loud to him, no matter what. The girl spent the whole day in such a tense regime. She read her master various romantic stories, but it is impossible to please him. Therefore, Pola ran to the library many times for new books. This hard day ended, and the main character went to her chambers. The girl changed her clothes and, completely exhausted, fell face down on her bed. At the same time, she thought that she did not deserve such torment as this. The main character wants to fall asleep faster so that tomorrow she will have the strength to once again court the capricious gentleman who does not appreciate or respect her at all. Paula is resting in her bed. Suddenly, the girl hears strange sounds in the room of the young gentleman who is behind the wall, like terrible groans. Vincent Bellunita has had another attack of his illness. At first, the main character thought in her sleep that she had dreamed it all. But after coming to her senses a little, the girl realized that something was wrong with the young count. Realizing the danger of the current situation, Paula finally woke up and decided to check what was happening to her master, because it all looked very suspicious. The main character jumped out of her bed and quickly ran out into the hallway. The girl wants to quickly get to her master's room to check what happened to him. Paula burst into the young count's room without knocking. She ran to Vincent Bellunita's bedside and asked if he was all right. At first, the young count did not recognize his maid, but then he collected his thoughts and said that he had had a very strange dream, which frightened him very much. The girl hurried to calm her employer and noticed that the young gentleman was now in a state of shock. He had covered his head with a sheet and was shaking with fear. The main character stroked Vincent Bellunita and said that the nightmare was over, and he could sleep peacefully. But the young count replied that he would not be able to sleep if he remained alone in his room. The girl smiled meaningfully and said that she could keep her master company and stay with him in the room until he fell asleep. For the main character, this would not be difficult at all. The main character thought that Vincent Bellunita would drive her away again. But this time, everything happened differently. The young gentleman had such a terrible dream that he had to ask the maid to stay with her. The girl stayed near her master's bed. She decided not to go anywhere until Vincent Bellunita fell asleep. Therefore, the main character will have to stay awake for a long time. Paula decided to take her master by the hand so that it would be easier for him to come to his senses and calm down. The girl decided to tell the young count an interesting story for the night so that he would be distracted a little from his nightmare. Vincent Bellunita lies on his bed and still trembles with fear, but he has already felt a little better. He does not mind if the maid tells him something interesting. The main character wants to tell the young count about her younger sister. Pola said that when her little sister was still alive, she often had nightmares in her dreams and always asked the girl for protection. At such moments, she always took her sister by the hand and said something soothing to her. The girl hugged the frightened girl and told her that the dream was just an empty illusion. It would all soon pass and a sunny morning would come, which would bring a new day. The main thing was that her sister was nearby, and that was the only thing that was real now. Paula continues to stroke her master's hand. She said that all the events that happen in a dream always stay there. Reality lives by other laws, and the monsters from nightmares will not get here. And it doesn't matter at all what these events were. The main thing is that they happened only in a dream. A person's past is already in the past, and his future has not yet been written, so no one can know it. The main character thought for a moment and added that any person needs to learn to let go of their past and take care of their present so that the events they fear do not happen. Paula thought of her little sister again and regretted that she had never been brave enough. Even that evening when her father sold the little girl into slavery to some scoundrels. The main character understands that she cannot change anything in her past and she just needs to come to terms with it and learn an important lesson from it. Suddenly, the young count squeezed his personal maid's hand tightly and said that he did not know how to defeat the ghosts of his past. But Vincent Bellunita would very much like to do so. Also, the young aristocrat does not understand how he can continue to live in this hell, in which he has been for a long time and constantly experiences inhuman torment. It's all just terrible. Suddenly, Vincent Bellunita quickly jumped up from his bed, holding the girl's hand tightly. The young nobleman screamed loudly, and the main character noticed that the young man had a large abrasion on his forehead. The young count is now in a very bad psychological state. He has begun to inflict injuries on himself, as evidenced by the young man's broken forehead. The main character noticed that something wrong had happened to the young gentleman while she was away. But in the current situation, she cannot help the young count in any way yet. The girl needs Vincent Bellunita's assistance, not his hostility. The young count came close to his maid and told her to look at him carefully. Doesn't the girl see what a terrible state he is in now? The eyes of the young aristocrat see nothing. His heart is filled with horror, and his body is tormented by unbearable pain. Vincent Bellunita's soul is consumed by anger and despair. He does not know what to do to restore his sight and relieve the constant pain that exhausts his body and psyche day and night. After this, the young count firmly grasped the head of his personal maid with trembling hands and said that she too should be afraid of losing her sight, especially at this moment. When the young aristocrat grabbed the main character by the head, she thought that he was definitely blind. This can be seen from his imprecise and uncertain movements. The girl also realized that in the current situation, the young man's blindness could serve her well. Vincent Bellunita continued to complain about his life. The young nobleman said that his existence was meaningless because he had become a miserable invalid and was enveloped in impenetrable darkness. The young man looked intently into the eyes of the main character and said that he did not want to hear any more inspiring words from her. He was tired of them, and he did not believe in them at all. The young aristocrat added that it was easy for ordinary people to say all sorts of inspiring nonsense because they had never been blind or suffered from excruciating pain day and night. Vincent Bellunita once again shouted loudly that he never again in his life wanted to hear inspiring maxims from a person who had not experienced what he had. After this, the young man added that his eyes would never see anything again in this life. The young aristocrat does not understand why he should continue to fight for his existence. The main character listened attentively to her master and asked him why he locked himself in his room. The girl suggests that self-isolation is a peculiar way for the young count to die. Vincent Bellunita confirmed his personal maid's assumption. He said that there is nothing wrong with consciously choosing death over living as an invalid. Now the girl understood everything. The psychology of the young count became absolutely clear to her. Vincent Bellunita locked himself in the room to die here unnoticed by those around him. The young man released his emotional tension and calmed down a little. He covered his face with his hands and thought hard about something. Vincent Bellunita thought for a moment and said that he did not believe that God gave everyone only as many trials as they could bear. He believed that all this was the invention of mossy and lying clerics. The young aristocrat looks ahead in confusion. He has completely lost his spiritual support in life and is now ready to leave this world at any moment. The main character said that Vincent Bellunita has the right to choose his future destiny, but before that, he needs to think carefully so as not to make an irreparable mistake. The girl came closer to her master and took him gently by the shoulders. She said that Vincent Bellunita should warn her of his imminent death, because she did not like sudden burials. Until then, the young count's personal servant promised to always be by his side. The main character thought for a moment and added that it didn't scare her at all. Vincent Bellunita could kill her whenever he wanted. But now he needed to calm down and rest a bit. Pola looked at her interlocutor carefully and said that no one would remember her anyway if she died or disappeared. The girl had nothing in this life, but the young count had everything he could wish for. So why shouldn't he take advantage of it before his possible death? Vincent Bellunita sighed heavily when he heard his maid's words. The young aristocrat said that all this was absolutely useless. The girl continues to insist on her own. She thought for a moment and asked her master to do something small to begin with. Vincent Bellunita has enormous opportunities and resources that he can use and enjoy. He can, for example, order a delicious dinner from his chef and eat it. The girl added that if the weather was fine, the young gentleman could go outside and have a wonderful time there, and also breathe some fresh air. This would strengthen his sick body and tired soul. In any case, seclusion never ended well. The young aristocrat listens attentively to his interlocutor, who does not give up trying to inspire the young man to a new struggle for his existence. The girl diplomatically and gently tries to influence the young man, who is now on the very edge. It is a difficult task, but quite feasible. The main character added that Vincent Bellunita can return to his room at any time to lock himself in it if he becomes scared again. Paula thought for a moment and said that the young count had nothing to worry about at all, because he had power, wealth, security, servants, and a huge estate. Vincent Bellunita hunched over under the weight of his fears. The young aristocrat said that all the advantages of his life that the girl had named were fraught with hidden threats and could be very dangerous. The main character listened to her master and said that it is much more terrible to be a beggar and not have your own home or a piece of bread. Everything else becomes simply unimportant for such people. Paula added that all people live, each in their own hell. Some suffer from poverty, some are hated by their parents, and some are restless because they have lost their mental balance. Therefore, if a person has a place to hide from life's troubles, then this is a great success. You need to be able to appreciate what you have in this life. Otherwise, you can lose it. The main character looks at the young count attentively, and it begins to seem to her that her words reach him. The young man is silent and thinks intensely about something. The girl decided to show her affection and support to the gentleman, so she gently touched his chin and said that she had never been so close to anyone spiritually. Paula has also seen only troubles, illnesses, beatings from her father, and the death of people close to her in this life. But the girl holds on to this life and is not going to give up. The main character said that she was always afraid to show herself to people because everyone around her always considered her a very ugly girl. But now Pola's life has changed completely. She left her tyrannical father, who constantly beat her. The girl lives in the estate and takes care of the owner of this house in the hope that he will soon recover and enjoy life as before. Vincent Bellunita cannot give up. He must continue the fight. The main character stroked her master and said that she asked him to stay strong and fight with all his might to overcome illness and death. The girl continues to instill positive thoughts in Vincent Bellunita, which always helped her survive in difficult situations. And there were many such moments in the life of the main character. Paula gently touched her master's hand and said that she would try to get used to the new place as best she could while Vincent Bellunita was recovering. Life would suggest a solution to the problem, but one had to be able to discern this solution. The main character said that now it doesn't matter to her what happens to her in this estate. She decided to be with the blind count until the very end. After these words, the girl hugged her master tightly to warm him with her love. Vincent Bellunita did not expect such a turn of events and began to cry quietly, burying his face in the soft and warm chest of his personal maid. For a moment, the young count felt as if he was in his mother's arms. This calmed the young man, and he immediately wanted to sleep. A few minutes later, the main character treated a large abrasion on her master's forehead. This wound turned out to be shallow. The life and health of the young count are no longer in danger. After this, the maid decided that it was time for her to go to her room. The young aristocrat did not like this idea very much, and he tried to detain the girl. Vincent Bellunita asked why his personal maid wanted to leave him. He could use a girl's company when he was feeling very scared and lonely. This night was very strange and unusual. The main character can't believe her ears. Could it be that the proud young count asked his personal maid to stay with him in his room? Shouldn't he have kicked her out immediately, as he did before? Vincent Bellunita started acting like a petulant child. He said that he had not yet fully recovered from the nightmare he had had. That is why he needed Paula to stay with him now. The main character looked closely at her interlocutor and said that the young count was most likely just playing a joke on her and wanted to play some new evil joke on her. But the young count again asked his personal maid to stay with him until he fell asleep. Vincent Bellunita added that he was quite serious now and did not intend to offend Paula. The main character listened attentively to her master and sighed heavily. The girl was very tired today and wanted to sleep, but nothing could be done. Therefore, Paula agreed to stay with the young count a little longer. Vincent Bellunita calmed down when the maid agreed to stay in the room with him for a while longer. The young count wants to spend the rest of this night in peace, to gain at least some strength. He is also exhausted to the limit. This time, the young nobleman himself took his interlocutor by the hand as a sign that he trusted her completely and was ready to let her get as close as possible. The main character really wants to sleep, but she will have to stand this forced watch because the young count personally asked her to do so. This flatters the maid's pride. She understands that she was able to achieve good results, despite great difficulties. The girl sat next to her master's bed until dawn. He fell asleep almost immediately, but the main character decided to follow the young count so that nothing else would happen to him that night. Paula understands that she urgently needs to come to her senses after a night of partying with a young aristocrat. Today, the girl will have many important things to do that cannot be delayed. The main character decided not to go to bed at all. The girl washed herself and immediately went to the estate library to find a book for her master that he would definitely like. A few minutes later, the girl returned to her master's chambers with a large stack of new books that she was going to read to him that day. The young count looked at all these books and said that his maid was very stubborn. The girl laughed and told Vincent Bellunita that this was why she was still working for him and was planning to quit in the foreseeable future. The main character prepared to open the book and told the young gentleman not to interrupt her this time and to listen to the entire romantic story from beginning to end. The girl began to read a fairy tale about a little pig. This greatly puzzled Vincent Bellunita, who loves serious romantic stories and often with a tragic ending. But this fairy tale seemed too naive and childish to the young nobleman. The young count stopped his maid from reading and asked her why she was reading him a children's story. But the girl pretended not to understand anything. She thought the story was very funny and instructive. The proud aristocrat is not used to such treatment. It seems to him that the main character is simply mocking him, reading him a story about some little pig. The girl laughed in response and said that this beautiful children's story would be just right for a young nobleman who behaves like a real child, especially when he is capricious and disobeys discipline. The main character said that children's fairy tales help a person with a delicate mental organization to restore their psyche and replenish mental energy. The girl has experienced this more than once. Vincent Bellunita has never heard of such a thing. He is very surprised. The maid watches her master attentively. The young count has become a little quiet and does not throw anything at her. This is already some progress. The young count covered his face with his hand and said that the maid had convinced him. After that, Vincent Bellunita allowed the girl to continue reading the children's story. The main character immediately began reading the story of the little pink pig until the young master changed his mind and made her read something else. Paula has a wonderful soft voice. This makes her a great storyteller. The girl has read enough books in her life to have developed a good reading taste, but the young count was again dissatisfied with his personal maid. Vincent Bellunita thought that the girl was not reading loudly, slowly, and clearly enough. So he began to make comments to the main character about her manner of reading books out loud. The girl does not feel very well in such a tense environment. She cannot understand why simply reading a book out loud causes so many problems when Vincent Bellunita is nearby. The young count listens attentively to his personal maid reading and makes her reread some pages several times. In this way, he wants to teach his subordinate to read aloud correctly. The main character does not retreat in the face of difficulties in the current situation. The girl is determined enough to succeed and read this book to the very end, despite the manipulations of Vincent Bellunita. Paula knows that she will definitely succeed in her endeavors. The main character has nothing to lose in this life, except life itself. So she does what she must and come what may. A new day has come. The main character is washing dishes in the kitchen and thinking about what book she will read to her master today. The girl has several interesting ideas on this matter. The main character thought for a while and finally made a decision about today's book for the young master. Now, this book needs to be found in the manor library to prepare for reading. The girl finished washing the dishes and quickly ran to the local library to find the book she had just thought of. It would be a wonderful read of a great story. Vincent Bellunite would like it. The main character walks along the corridor of the estate to the library. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls the girl. It is the house manager who wants to talk to Paula about some important issues that concern the young count. Isabella never just shows up. She is always busy with something, so the head of the maids has no time to indulge in nonsense and idle talk. The girl approached Isabella and asked her what she needed. The house manager said that Paula had settled into the Bellunite estate very well. Therefore, the girl had another very important and responsible task. Isabella said that from now on, the main character would sort the letters that constantly arrived to Vincent Bellunite. After that, the house manager handed the maid a thick stack of unopened envelopes. The girl took the envelopes and began to examine them carefully. Isabella said that this pile mostly contained invitations and cards with wishes for a speedy recovery for Vincent Bellunite. The maid needed to sort all these letters by similar topics so that it would be easier for the young count to understand them. The maid took one letter out of the pile of envelopes and began to examine it carefully. This message turned out to be signed with the name Violet. Isabella said that this was a special envelope, different from all the others. The main character must put aside messages from a girl named Violet that arrive every 2 days. The house manager said that it was very important. Paula asked Isabella if these letters should be delivered to the young master. The house manager said that it was not necessary. Such messages should simply be put aside. The main character listened attentively to her boss's instructions and said that she would do everything exactly as she ordered. But this strange situation made the girl think. The girl continued to sort through the letters from the pile of envelopes that Isabella had handed her. Suddenly, she discovered another strange letter and showed it to the manager. Isabella looked at this mysterious letter, which was without an envelope and had only a few words written on it. Someone asked the young count in one sentence how he was doing. Having read this message, the manager turned to the main character and ordered her to write a response to this message. But it must be done right now. The main character did not expect such a development of events. The girl felt a little confused. She does not know what to write to correctly answer the message for the young count. But Isabella hastened to calm the girl and said that she was free to write whatever she wanted. It was permissible to reply to this particular letter. If there were new letters from this addressee, the maid could reply as she pleased. After that, the house manager told the maid to start sorting the letters immediately and quickly go about her business. The main character did not expect such a development of events. She simply does not know how to approach this matter. She had to start somewhere, so she decided to take a close look at all the envelopes she had to figure out what was what. A few minutes later, the girl sat down at the desk to write a response to the strange message addressed to Vincent Bellunite. The main character froze in indecision. She still doubts whether she can do this. The young count's personal maid decided that it would be right to write a simple and short answer. So the girl wrote in one sentence of 4 words on behalf of Vincent Bellunita that he was doing well. A few days later, the main character received a reply to her letter, which again stated in one sentence that the weather was currently good in the place where the sender was. This message puzzled the girl very much. The main character looked at this strange letter again and realized that she did not understand anything. All this seemed very strange to the maid, but when the main character examined the letter again, this time more carefully, she noticed traces of human tears on the expensive paper. The girl would never confuse such marks with anything else. Later, such letters arrived at Bellunite's estate almost every day. They were short and incomprehensible. But the most interesting thing about them was that there was nothing written on the envelopes of these letters except for a few words of another short message. Isabella told the maid that she had no time to answer these strange messages, so in the future, the main character would always do it. And this is not up for discussion. The girl tried to be indignant and to absolve herself of this responsibility. She said that she was already too busy taking care of Vincent Bellunit, but Isabella pretended not to hear anything and silently went away to do her own thing. The main character sat down at her desk again to write a response to another strange short message. But this time, her answer will not be so frivolous. But what exactly she should write in response to the strange message, the girl does not yet know. The main character sits at her desk and goes over various possible options in her head. After this, the maid got up from the table and decided to look out the window at the trees that grow near the estate in order to collect her thoughts a little and come up with the right answer to the letter. The main character thought for a moment and looked at the tree branches swaying in the light breeze. And at that moment, the girl had an idea, and she came up with the right answer, which she would now write on paper. The maid immediately returned to her desk, paper and ink to write a reply before she forgot it. Life in the Bellunita estate moves too fast, because there lives a young count who constantly needs care and attention. Therefore, it is possible to get distracted and forget everything. The main character wrote in a rather beautiful handwriting, for such a poor and uneducated girl, that the buds were already swelling on the tree branches. The girl thought that she had done an excellent job with the task. After this, the main character went to the young count to take care of him and continue to perform her direct duties in this house. The girl approached Vincent Bellunita's chambers and saw a stranger knocking on his door and asking to be let into the room immediately. All this seemed very strange and unusual to the maid. The main character carefully watches the uninvited guest and tries to understand what he is, and why he so unceremoniously dares to knock on the door of the young count. The stranger took the girl by surprise when he saw her watching him. He asked the maid who she was. The main character replied that she was the young master's new personal maid and her name was Pola. The uninvited guest listened attentively to the girl and decided to come closer to her. He took the maid by the hand and said that he was very pleased to meet her. This surprised the maid very much. No one in this house had ever treated her so politely before. After that, something completely unexpected happened. The stranger kissed the main character's hand as a greeting. The girl is in a state of mild shock. No one has ever kissed her hand before. The young man introduced himself as a maid and said that his name was Eden Christopher. The main character looks closely at the uninvited guest and cannot understand how he ended up here and who let him in. The girl deserves credit for trying not to lose her head in the current situation and to think clearly, even despite such polite treatment of her, which can turn any girl's head. Paula looks closely at Eden Christopher and realizes that he is a very strange young man who has somehow mysteriously entered the wing of the house that is closed to outsiders. The maid collected her thoughts and told the uninvited guest that strangers were strictly forbidden to enter here, so the young man would have to leave the house immediately. Otherwise, she would call other servants for help. Suddenly, the main character heard her master's voice from his room. Vincent Bellunita told the maid to immediately send Eden Christopher out of the house. The uninvited guest asked the young count why he was driving him away. Didn't he miss his old friend? Vincent Bellunita got even angrier and said that he would start a row if the guest didn't go away. This scared the main character. The maid thought that her charge might have another fit, so she took the keys from her uniform pocket and wanted to open the door to the young count's chambers. But Isabella suddenly appeared and stopped the girl at the last moment. After this, the house manager greeted Eden Christopher and took his coat and hat. The young man also greeted Isabella politely and remarked out loud that he had not seen the woman for a long time. After that, the ladies' man said that Isabella was still as beautiful as ever and had not changed at all. The house manager replied that Eden Christopher had matured greatly. Apparently, Isabella liked this young man. The manager invited the guest into the house and offered him a cup of tea. Eden Christopher happily agreed and accepted the manager's offer. The main character brought the young man a cup of aromatic tea and stood meekly, waiting for new instructions. But Eden Christopher sincerely thanked the girl and said that he did not need anything else. The maid was very embarrassed because no one had spoken to her so politely before. The girl also felt a little ashamed for trying to drive an important guest out of his friend's house. After this, Eden Christopher said with regret that since their last meeting, Vincent Bellunite had become much worse. When he saw the young count last time, he felt much better than now. The young man asked Isabella how long the young count had been hiding in his room. This way of existence is killing Vincent Bellunita. It is immediately noticeable when you enter this estate. The house manager said that Vincent Bellunita had been in captivity by his own will for 6 months. Eden Christopher listened carefully to Isabella and said that it was all very sad. The main character stands near her interlocutors, waiting for new assignments. She hears their conversation and thinks that no one in this world can stand being locked up for 6 months. Sooner or later, such a recluse will begin to experience irreversible changes in the psyche. The maid looks at Eden Christopher carefully and tries to understand who this man really is. He knows a lot about Vincent Bellunita, and Isabella favors him. Eden Christopher turned out to be a very perceptive young man. The guest looked closely at the main character and asked her if she wanted to know who he was. The main character was very embarrassed after this direct question from the unexpected guest. The maid decided to apologize for her excessive curiosity. But Eden Christopher said that there was nothing wrong with that, and it was quite normal for a young girl. Eden Christopher smiled pleasantly and looked at the main character carefully. The young man said that Pola was different from the previous maids who had served Vincent Bellunita before. The guest thought for a moment and added that he was now at ease about his friend's future, because he had complete confidence in the new maid. But despite this, he should not have left Vincent Bellunita alone for a long time. Isabella hastened to reassure the young man and said that he had done everything in his power. But Eden Christopher replied that between family and friend, he had chosen the former. That was how life had turned out. Now the young man felt guilty about it before Vincent Bellunita. Eden Christopher took a cup of aromatic tea and said that he had to see his friend at least once to ask him for forgiveness for leaving him at a difficult moment in his life. After these words, the young man drank some tea and said that otherwise he would not be able to sleep peacefully at night. This question constantly weighs on him. Eden Christopher thought for a while and decided to stay at the estate for a few days. It's time for Vincent Bellunita to be fed. The young count is capricious and says that he's already full and doesn't want to eat anymore. But the main character insists that the young man eat a little more. The young count does not listen to his maid. He refused to eat again and said that he could not eat any more. Although we must give him credit. The young aristocrat ate quite a decent portion of porridge today. The main character looks at her master attentively and understands that he has surpassed himself today and eaten a relatively large amount of healthy food. This is already progress. There is still nothing to strive for. The maid decided to clear away the rest of the dinner and asked the young count if he wanted to meet Eden Christopher. The young aristocrat flatly refused to meet his friend. The girl was very surprised. Vincent Bellunita became very angry and told his personal maid that she had no right to even talk to this terrible man who had betrayed him and abandoned him in his difficult moment. When the main character left the young count's chambers, she met Eden Christopher in the kitchen. The young man smiled sweetly at the maid and wished her a good morning. After that, he continued his breakfast. The girl does not know what to do now and how to communicate with Eden Christopher. The master forbade his maid any contact with his former friend. But he now lives in the estate and the main character constantly crosses paths with him during the day. Eden Christopher invited the girl to sit down with him at the table and have breakfast. But the main character immediately remembered the order of her master and immediately refused the guest's offer. The ladies' man won't let the girl go. He asked Paula not to leave the dining room because he doesn't want to have breakfast all alone. The main character listened attentively to Eden Christopher's request and is now in a state of complete stupor. The girl does not know what to do or say. She has found herself in a stalemate. Eden Christopher put his fork down on the table and said that he couldn't eat all alone. When he sat alone at the table, he couldn't swallow a bite, and the food didn't taste good at all. The main character looks at the young man attentively and listens to his words. But something tells the girl that Eden Christopher is not being completely sincere with her now. Paula remembers very well the strict and clear order of her master not to have any contact with Eden Christopher under any circumstances. Otherwise, the maid will be subjected to terrible punishment. And this is no joke. But Vincent Bellunita's ex-boyfriend has an irresistible charm, so the main character decides to sit with him for a while during breakfast. It's a risky business, but the girl couldn't help herself. Paula sits at the table with Eden Christopher and looks at his handsome face. The main character has seen a lot in this life, and she understands that a real heartbreaker and ladies' man sits in front of her. Eden Christopher watches his interlocutor eat her breakfast and smiles sweetly at her. This slightly embarrasses the main character, but she holds on, not showing it. The girl does not react to the young man and continues to calmly eat her boiled potatoes and their skins. The main character understands that now she needs to be very careful and watch her every word. Suddenly, Eden Christopher asked the maid how his friend Vincent Bellunita was doing. He was probably very angry with his former friend for leaving him in a difficult moment. but the girl said that the young count was not particularly angry with the guest. The young man was very surprised by this answer of the maid. He said that he heard Vincent Bellunita cursing and throwing various things to satisfy his anger. The main character peeled and ate one potato. The girl did it very carefully, putting all the peels on a napkin so that they could be quickly removed from the table later. After that, Paula said that for Vincent Bellunita, throwing various things is a common thing and there is nothing special about it. Eden Christopher listened carefully to the girl and said that he sympathized with her because she was constantly in danger. The main character continues to have breakfast and remains indifferent to the words of her interlocutor. In order not to say anything unnecessary to the gentleman's former friend, the girl stuffed her mouth with potatoes. This greatly puzzled Eden Christopher. After this, the young aristocrat thought for a moment and said that he wondered if the main character knew that her master's psyche was in a borderline state. The girl listens to her interlocutor's questions, and they seem a little strange to her. Perhaps the young nobleman has just arranged a kind of test for the main character. Paula tries her best to understand this mysterious man sitting next to her, but she can't. The main character is a little confused because of this and starts to get nervous. Eden Christopher did not stop there. He continued asking his strange questions. The young aristocrat smiled mysteriously and said that he had heard rumors that Vincent Bellunita had become such an immoral and cruel man that it had become very difficult for him to find a maid for his house. The main character listened attentively to her interlocutor and agreed with him but did not tell him about it. The girl thought about the rumors that the ill-wishers of the young count had spread. They did not show him in the best light. Vincent Bellunita's maid thought for a few seconds and realized that in all these insidious and treacherous rumors that the enemies of the young count spread, there is only a grain of truth. But there is also a large part of fiction. Eden Christopher laughed loudly when he noticed the maid's confusion and said that she must have had enough of Vincent Bellunita and wanted to leave him for a more suitable home. But the main character replied that she was quite satisfied with the young master's treatment of her. After this, the young nobleman said that Vincent Bellunita had always been a very stubborn man who never gave in to anyone in anything. Eden Christopher continued to escalate the situation. He said that Vincent Bellunita can get offended by the smallest things, and he gets blood in his head very often, which makes him a terrible person. The main character intuitively feels that Eden Christopher is not being sincere with her now. It seems that this young nobleman is testing the girl's loyalty to her master. But who knows? Maybe Vincent Bellunita's former friend wants to recruit his personal servant. Time will tell. The young aristocrat jumped up from his seat and emotionally called his friend a stubborn ram. The main character was very surprised and puzzled by this behavior of the young man. The girl watches her interlocutor attentively and continues to listen to his story about Vincent Bellunita. The young aristocrat took his place at the dinner table again and continued to eat breakfast. He said that 6 months ago, the young count stopped answering his best friend's letters. Eden Christopher was only able to visit Vincent Bellunita now because he was delayed by important and urgent family circumstances. The main character listened carefully to the young man and said that he did not need to worry too much about his friend. He was now on the right path and was trying very hard to get out of the dark abyss in which he found himself. Fate decreed that Vincent Bellunita lost his sight and became a helpless blind man, whom almost everyone in the world immediately forgot about. Only his closest and most loyal friends and comrades remained by his side. But there were very few of them. That's always the case. The young count is scared, but he fights his phobias. The maid added that sometimes it is better to leave a person completely alone so that he can overcome his inner demons and reach a new level in his development. Eden Christopher listens attentively to his interlocutor, who seemed to him smarter than she wants to seem. The young nobleman was very surprised when he heard such smart speeches from a simple maid. The friend of the owner of the estate thought for a moment and said that the girl's words seemed very sincere and profound to him. This was admirable. The main character realized that a hereditary nobleman had just spoken to her as if she were a girl of equal status. This puzzled Paula greatly, and now she doesn't know how to react to it. Maybe she's taking on too much. Eden Christopher added that Paula is a very sensitive person. He did not expect Vincent Bellunita to find such a good maid. The main character was very surprised when she heard all this. The young aristocrat thought again and said that he did not have the opportunity to stay at the estate for long. Therefore, he had to meet his friend to tell him something very important in person. Eden Christopher asked his interlocutor ingratiatingly if she could help him and influence her master to meet and talk to him. But the main character replied that she had too little influence to do this. Vincent Bellunita's friend was very upset when he heard the girl's answer and said that he could not knock on a closed door for the rest of his life and not get any result. He had to think of another way to talk to the young count. Aiden Christopher has decided to take a different path to achieve his goal. The young heartthrob wants to seduce Vincent Bellunita's personal maid so that she can help him meet her master. But the main character turned out to be a tough nut to crack. She immediately understood what the young nobleman was getting at and refused to give in to his love charms. At that moment, the girl realized that a rather strange guest had arrived at her master's mansion, who had something in mind and was not showing his true intentions. When breakfast with Eden Christopher was over, the main character went outside to get some fresh air and unwind a little. Near the estate, Paula met a girl named Renika. She also works in the big house of the young count. Renika brings necessary things and products from the main house of the Bellunita estate to the outbuilding. Often this girl shares with Paula small news about the mansion and the events that take place there. When the main character told her friend that Eden Christopher had moved into the outbuilding, she was very surprised by this circumstance. Renika said that this young aristocrat was a very important person. He was the master's best friend, but something happened and they quarreled. In addition, the girl added that Eden Christopher always looks great and treats all the servants well. Among the workers of the Bellunita estate, this nobleman has a reputation as a very kind person. After this little lecture, Renika indulged in romantic dreams about Eden Christopher. She told the main character that she was very lucky to easily communicate with the beautiful lady's man, who all the girls in the kingdom dream of. Renika is very sorry that she can't come to the outbuilding. Otherwise, she would have come without thinking to take a look at the handsome young man. After talking with Renika, the main character returned to the outbuilding and realized that the Bellunita estate has very strict rules for everyone who works there. This is especially true for the outbuilding, which houses a limited number of the young count's most trusted people. The maid headed to her master's room but met Eden Christopher at the door, who was trying unsuccessfully to enter. The young nobleman was tired of knocking on the closed door without result and sat down on the floor to rest a little and collect his thoughts. Eden Christopher is sad and feels very ill now. The main character is watching her master's friend closely, who does not notice her. The girl understands that the emotions that Eden Christopher is experiencing are real. He is very upset that he cannot communicate with Vincent Bellunita. Paula decided to cover Eden Christopher with the blanket she was carrying to her master. The girl approached the young aristocrat and woke him up, because he had already fallen asleep under the door that led to his friend's room. Eden Christopher yawned and said that he had been knocking on the door for a long time, but no one had opened it for him. He thought that Vincent Bellunita would be angry with him for this, but nothing happened. There was only silence in the young count's room and nothing more. The main character listened attentively to the young nobleman and told him that he was wasting his energy on meaningless actions. Vincent Bellunita cannot open the door of his room, even if he wanted to, because the girl locks it from the outside with a key. Paula took the key out of her pocket and said that she could open the door and let Eden Christopher in so that he could talk to his friend. The young aristocrat does not know what to answer the maid, who surprised him with her offer. Eden Christopher came to his senses and said that he was ready to implement the main character's plan into reality. The main thing is that Vincent Bellunita does not commit some unpredictable act that everyone will regret later. The young nobleman added sheepishly that he was very ashamed of having to expose Vincent Bellunita's personal maid, who was doing him a favor, to harm. The main character opened the door to her master's room and told Eden Christopher not to go in right away. This must be done only after the girl changed the blanket on the young count's bed. Paula entered Vincent Bellunita's chambers, but for some reason there was a suspicious silence. The main character was wary and prepared for any surprise from her master. The maid was also confused by a new disgusting smell that appeared in the room. The girl went to Vincent Bellunita's bed to sort out the situation. A moment later, the main character froze in horror. She saw the body of her master lying near the bed, showing no signs of life. The maid caught her breath at this picture. Vincent Bellunita lies face down on the floor. The main character loudly called her master, but he did not answer her. The girl does not know what to do now. Perhaps the young count achieved his goal and his suffering ended forever. Paula did not lose her head in the critical situation. She immediately called the young count's personal doctor, who provided him with the necessary assistance. The doctor said that Vincent Bellunita's life was not in danger. The young count had ordinary indigestion. The main character can't understand why this happened. But after thinking a little, the girl realized that she was to blame for everything. Vincent Bellunita had been in captivity for a long time and was very poorly fed. The maid had given him too much food during the last dinner. As a result, the young count's body could not withstand it, and he fainted. In future, the girl should be more careful about feeding her charge. In fact, it was a very dangerous situation for the young count, who could have died from the fact that the sugar content in his blood had increased sharply. The maid looks at her master with pity and cannot believe that he is so weak. Previously, the girl thought that Vincent Bellunita was just being capricious and nothing more. When leaving, the doctor said that the main character should take care of her master because his health is very fragile. The maid escorted Vincent Bellunita's personal physician and closed the door behind him. After that, the main character decided to take care of her ward. The girl returned to the young count's room. Next to the bed where Vincent Bellunita lies, his best friend sits. Eden Christopher has achieved his goal. Now he can talk to the young count. The main character does not want to disturb her friends and interrupt their conversation. She will stay aside and will closely watch her ward. Eden Christopher looked closely at his best friend and asked him why he had lost so much weight since their last meeting. The proud count turned away from his friend and did not want to answer him. The resentment towards Eden Christopher was deeply rooted in the heart of the young nobleman. Eden Christopher grabbed his head with his hand and said that Vincent Bellunita should not behave like this anymore. Otherwise, his best friend would have to visit his grave. Vincent Bellunita remains unmoved. The young count does not want to communicate with his best friend who abandoned him in trouble, so he told him to leave immediately. Eden Christopher said he wanted to help his friend get out of this abyss he found himself in. He would do whatever it took to make that happen. Vincent Bellunita laughed evilly and said that his friend could not help him in any way, and no one could return his sight lost as a result of the insidious poisoning. The young count said that his mental recovery depended only on his sight being restored. If no one could cure the boy's eyes, then he should not live any longer. Eden Christopher was tired of watching his friend bury himself alive and become depressed. He said emotionally that this cannot go on like this any longer. Something urgently needs to be done to get out of this terrible situation. Vincent Bellunita asked his best friend what he should do now. No one can give him the help he needs and cure his eyes. Eden Christopher replied that everyone needed to be told the truth about the young earl's condition in order to stop the idle gossip that was spreading throughout the kingdom. Vincent Bellunita said that this should not be done under any circumstances. The enemies of the young count would only be delighted and would triumph, spreading even more evil gossip. The young man added that the conspirators must not know the truth about his state of health. If they did, they would consider him weak and send a hired killer straight to Vincent Bellunita's room, who would not be able to offer worthy resistance because he was blind. Eden Christopher said that the conspirators probably already knew about the young count's blindness. Perhaps they were satisfied with the current state of affairs because they wanted to destroy the young man not physically, but morally, by destroying his strong personality. Vincent Bellunita understands that there is a great deal of truth in his friend's words, and this makes him very angry. The young aristocrat is again overcome by the anger of impotence. The young count's best friend looked him straight in the eye and said that Vincent Bellunita must change something in his life for the better. Otherwise, he would tell the whole truth to the people. The main character heard Eden Christopher's words and felt a wave of fear. The girl understands that the friend's conversation is gradually reaching a dead end. This could provoke another attack in her ward. Paula was right. Vincent Bellunita was very angry when he heard his friend's words. He jumped out of his bed and said that Eden Christopher was crazy if he wanted to tell everyone the truth about the young count. Eden Christopher sits humbly in his chair and remains unmoved. The young nobleman replied to his friend that even if he was crazy, in the current situation, there was no way to remain inactive. Vincent Bellunita's friend added that the young count could not continue to live like this. He was slowly killing himself, locked in his room. It was simply painful to watch. It was necessary to take urgent measures to return to normal life. Eden Christopher thought for a moment and said that it was very foolish for a person to live in the past. One should always live in the here and now, and also make plans for the future, so that one is prepared for any misfortunes that may happen. The young count listened attentively to his friend and said that he was talking complete nonsense. No one could help Vincent Bellunita get rid of his blindness and deep depression. Eden Christopher replied that no matter what, he would get his friend out of this mess and bring him back to normal life. But it would take a lot of effort and resources. Vincent Bellunita would soon be able to see for himself. After this, the young aristocrat approached the blind count and said that he had a choice. Vincent Bellunita could pull himself together and return to normal life, or Eden Christopher would tell everyone what was really going on with the young count. The main character's master became even more angry after his friend's ultimatum. He does not want to make concessions to his comrade and is ready to attack him with his fists. Eden Christopher noticed his friend's growing anger, but he too was not going to back down from his plan and was ready to go to the end. That was the end of the conversation between the friends. It's the morning of the next day. The main character is washing the windows in the living room. The weather outside is beautiful. While working, the girl thinks about yesterday's conversation between two friends, which almost ended in a fight between them. It was a dangerous situation. Eden Christopher is also in the living room. The young aristocrat is reading a newspaper to find out the latest news of the kingdom. He asks the main character how Vincent Bellunita is feeling. The maid remembers her master's strict orders not to communicate with Eden Christopher. Therefore, the girl feels uncomfortable around him and is in no hurry to answer him. The main character said that if the young aristocrat was very interested in how his friend was feeling, he could go to his room himself and check. But Eden Christopher, without taking his eyes off his newspaper, said that he would be very grateful to the girl if she herself told him about the state of health of Vincent Bellunita. The main character does not want to tell the young nobleman how the lord of the estate is doing, but apparently she will have to do it, because Eden Christopher is a very persistent person. The girl again remembered yesterday's conversation between the two friends, which took place in the young count's room. The maid did not like it at all that Eden Christopher had driven her master to another nervous breakdown. It was cruel of him. The main character had to put in a lot of effort to calm the young count down and bring him back to normal. Meanwhile, Eden Christopher continued to exert psychological pressure on his friend. The girl washes the window and remembers the conversation between her master and his friend yesterday. Pola thought for a moment and told Eden Christopher that he should not have pressed Vincent Bellunita so hard if he was so worried about his health. The young aristocrat replied that it was a forced measure on his part, so that Vincent Bellunita would receive an additional incentive to pull himself together and get out of the situation in which he found himself. Eden Christopher turned the page of the newspaper he was reading and said that it was very hard for him to watch Vincent Bellunita destroy not only his body and psyche, but also his reputation as an excellent nobleman. The main character said that she felt very sorry for the young count, but she, unfortunately, could not convince him to leave his room and go outside. Eden Christopher smiled meaningfully and said that Vincent Bellunita's personal maid was the only person who could convince him to get out of his prison and into the light of day. The main character finished washing the window in the living room and said that the young aristocrat was openly flattering her. After that, the girl said that she had other things to do now and left the room. Eden Christopher followed his friend's personal maid. The young man still has some questions that he would like to clarify in a conversation with the main character. Paula went to the library to find new books that she wanted to read to her master today. Eden Christopher followed the girl. The main character noticed that the young aristocrat was openly following her around the house. The girl really doesn't like that this is happening to her. She starts to get nervous. Eden Christopher asked the maid what she was going to do in the library. The girl replied that she was going to find the book she needed. The main character was silent for a moment and added that she reads books out loud to her master every day. This helps the young count fight his mental illness. The young aristocrat was very surprised when he heard the answer of his interlocutor. He asked how Vincent Bellunita behaved while reading books. The girl answered that at first the young count was capricious, but now he listens attentively to all the stories that she reads to him aloud. The main character added that she used to read children's fairy tales to the gentleman. Now she wants to pick out a book for the master that has a more serious content. A few minutes later, the girl found the book she wanted to read to the young count today. He should definitely like this story. Suddenly, the main character heard Eden Christopher's ironic laughter behind her. The young aristocrat found the whole situation very funny. The nobleman cannot contain his laughter because his domineering and stubborn friend, whom everyone knows as a tough and authoritative manager, listens to children's fairy tales performed by his personal servant. Eden Christopher can't believe this is even possible. He knows his best friend well and has never noticed his love for children's stories before. The main character looked at her interlocutor in surprise. The girl does not like the tone in which he speaks about her master. This is a manifestation of disrespect for the young count. After visiting the library, the girl went to her master's room to read him the book she had chosen. Eden Christopher accompanies the maid and says that he is very glad that such a good girl is his friend's personal servant. The main character said that she urgently needed to go to her master to fulfill her direct duties. Otherwise, she could be fired. Eden Christopher stopped the girl and offered her to make a bet. If Vincent Bellunita's personal maid makes him leave her room for just one step, then Eden Christopher will grant the girl any wish. This bet is made here and now and has no statute of limitations. The main character listened attentively to her interlocutor, and she did not like his proposal. The girl thinks that the young nobleman is making fun of her and her master. This cannot be a funny game because everything is very serious. Eden Christopher does not understand what the maid means. He continues to laugh and make fun of her, insisting on his stupid bet, which looks more like a cruel joke. The young aristocrat said that the maid should not show her character and resist his offer, because she is the weakest link in the chain. The girl will do what she is ordered to do anyway. Eden Christopher smiled meaningfully and said that he did not want to quarrel with Paula, but he would be very happy if he won the bet they had just made with her. After this, the young nobleman grabbed the girl's hand and kissed her. The young man added that if he won, the main character would lose her head because she would be executed. Eden Christopher found this whole situation very funny, but the main character is not in the mood for laughter at all. The girl looks closely at her interlocutor, and for a moment it seemed to her that this young man is not who he claims to be. The main character is experiencing a strange mixture of feelings. The girl is afraid of Eden Christopher and does not trust him. There is something suspicious and repulsive about this young nobleman. The maid thought of her master. She had come to this house only to serve the young count. But now a new danger hung over Pola. If she lost the bet she did not want to make, she would lose her head. It was terrible. The main character quickly came to her senses and collected her thoughts after the shock she had experienced. But bad thoughts will have to wait until better times. Now she needs to get to work. After that, the maid went to Vincent Bellunita's room to read him a new book. When Pola entered the young count's chambers, she saw that the gentleman was again in deep depression. He had covered his head with a sheet and did not want to see anyone. The girl tried to cheer up the young aristocrat, saying that they would soon find a way out of the current situation. But Vincent Bellunita believes that the fight is absolutely pointless. Let Eden Christopher fulfill his promise and finally destroy the young count's reputation by telling the whole world about his health problems. The main character listened attentively to her ward. The girl sympathizes with Vincent Bellunite and thinks that Eden Christopher can really fulfill his promise if the young count does not pull himself together. He has only 2 days to do so. The girl thinks intensely about Vincent Bellunita's best friend. She tries to understand how sincerely he wants the young count to leave his chambers and become completely healthy. Maybe there is some secret intent or conspiracy here. The main character put together all the facts she knew about Eden Christopher and realized that this man was a true friend of her master. He came up with a cunning plan that would force Vincent Bellunita to leave his room and go outside. The young aristocrat has thought everything through to the smallest detail, because he knows all the weaknesses and strengths of his friend. He wants the young count to overcome his fears and illnesses on his own in order to believe in himself again. The maid helped her charge get out of bed and leads him to the front door. The girl said that Vincent Bellunita must achieve the main goal and go outside. She will help the young count with this. The young man's hands are shaking. The main character felt it when she took his hand. But the girl insists on her own. The young count continues his way to the door with small steps. It is very painful for the main character to look at her ward and realize his great weakness. But she will do everything to fix all this and cure the young count. A new day has come. The maid again helps Vincent Bellunite to reach the door of his room, which leads to the corridor. Yesterday, the gentleman almost reached his cherished goal. Vincent Bellunita firmly took his maid by the hand and told her not to let him go under any circumstances. Without the girl's support, the young nobleman would not take a single step. The main character looks closely at her master and admires how he continues to fight his fears with all his might. Paula realized that now was a very important moment when she needed to let go of her master's hand so that he could get used to moving independently in space. The main character left her ward in the room and quickly ran out into the corridor to meet the young count there, who was supposed to go to her on his own. The girl stands in the corridor of the count's wing and calls the young gentleman to her. She convinces Vincent Bellunite that everything will definitely work out for him now. The blind aristocrat gathered his strength and with slow, uncertain steps headed towards the exit of his room, guided by the voice of his servant. Vincent Bellunita takes small steps, but it costs him a lot of effort. The young count is determined today. He wants to overcome his phobias. Suddenly, the blind nobleman stumbled and began to fall to the floor. Another moment, and Vincent Bellunita would hit the hard marble floor with all his might. The young count is very scared. He did not expect that he would slip so quickly and not reach the exit of his room. The young man does not want to believe that his attempt ended in failure, but the main character does not lose sight of her ward. The girl quickly ran to the blind count to catch him and save him from a painful fall on the hard marble floor of the noble chambers. At the last moment, the girl managed to soften the fall of her ward with her body. The main character lies on the floor, and Vincent Bellunita lies on top of her. The maid hastened to calm the young count and told him that he was a real good man because he was trying so hard. The young man replied that he had just been very scared, but the girl had saved him. This caused mixed feelings in Vincent Bellunita. He was very angry with himself for his blindness and helplessness. But the young man was also grateful to the main character for supporting him in a difficult moment. The main character hugs the young nobleman tightly and talks to him cheerfully. The girl said that any adventure can cause fear in a person, but only in this way can one learn to move on. Paula stroked her charge and said that he should remember these words for the future. If the young count becomes very scared, he should remember that only brave people conquer new heights. The blind aristocrat must realize the important truth that he is now like a small child who must start his life over again. Also, Vincent Bellunita should remember that he will always receive support from his loved ones. You just need to ask for it or call for help. The young count looks closely at his maid, who has now become a true friend to him. Vincent Bellunita asked the girl to always be there and support him in difficult moments of his life. The main character was very happy that her ward finally opened his heart and soul to her. She promised never to leave her master. The day has come when the winner of the bet between Eden Christopher and the main character must be determined. Paula decided to cut the young count's hair and gave him a great hairstyle. Vincent Bellunita felt some relief when he lost his old hair. The young count feels that some of his negative energy has gone with it, but he is not entirely sure whether it was worth it. The girl brought her charge some fresh pajamas to make him feel completely refreshed. But Vincent Bellunita thinks he needs to wear something different. The young count asked the maid to bring him clothes that are worn when going out. The main character was very surprised by this, but she is glad that her ward finally decided to overcome his fears. The maid immediately ran to get her master's new suit. She also remembers that the young count needs a new pair of shoes. In a few minutes, everything was ready. Vincent Bellunita dressed in his best suit. The main character helped the young count change. Now she was going to accompany him. When the young nobleman put on his new suit for the evening, he felt fresh and energetic again. It seemed to him that his former strength had returned to him. The maid went out into the hallway to prepare Eden Christopher for his friend to leave the room. The main character hopes that this time everything will go well. The young nobleman asked Pola if Vincent Bellunita was ready to leave his room. The girl replied that the young count should leave now. He had to wait a little. Eden Christopher can't understand how his friend can get out of the room on his own if he's blind. But the main character replied that Vincent Bellunita had worked long and hard on it. The girl looked intently at her interlocutor, and it seemed to her that Eden Christopher already knew everything, because he had been watching her every step for the last 3 days. The young men look attentively at the door, behind which Vincent Bellunita is now. They are waiting for the young count to come out, who has decided to overcome his fears. Eden Christopher noted that today is a beautiful day, and it would be nice to take a little walk in the fresh air. After these words, the young gentleman's best friend said that the buds on the tree branches had already swollen. This is a phrase from a letter written by the main character to a mysterious addressee. The girl heard these words and immediately guessed that the mysterious addressee to whom she wrote the messages was Eden Christopher. It was he who wrote those strange letters, which consisted of short and meaningful sentences. The young nobleman decided to get down to business and opened the door to his best friend's chambers. Now everything depends only on Vincent Bellunita. He must overcome all his fears or learn what shame and dishonor are. For Eden Christopher, this is also very important. He wants his best friend to regain his former appearance and return to the normal life of a respected aristocrat. The former miserable existence of the once powerful lord must be stopped immediately. The young aristocrat opened the door and resolutely entered Vincent Bellunita's chambers. The young count stands with his back to the door. He is dressed in a chic suit and is ready to challenge his phobias. The main character's master is collected and focused on his actions. He only needs to take a few steps to leave his room and escape from captivity. But this will require a lot of strength. Eden Christopher looks at his friend carefully and recognizes in him the same Vincent Bellunita he was before his disability. This even puzzled the young nobleman a little. Vincent Bellunita did not hesitate and waste time on unnecessary conversations. He resolutely headed for the door that leads to the corridor. Eden Christopher did not expect such a development of events. A young aristocrat tries to warn his best friend not to hurry. Otherwise, the young count might accidentally fall and hurt himself because he can't see anything. Vincent Bellunita's gaze is full of courage and determination. He must now overcome the most important barrier in his life. Otherwise, he no longer needs to live in this world. But before taking the decisive step, the heroine's master must do one more important thing. Suddenly, something completely unexpected happened. The young count swung his cane sharply, intending to hit his friend on the head. But Eden Christopher managed to duck, and the cane did not hit him. After that, Vincent Bellunita said that no one in the world dared to threaten him. Only the death of the impudent man would follow. Eden Christopher smiled sheepishly and said that he couldn't be killed because he was Vincent Bellunita's best friend. To these words, the blind count replied that Eden Christopher should choose for himself what this fact was for him. It could be either a reason or an excuse. But the young nobleman would never again threaten Vincent Bellunite. Otherwise, he would pay for it with his life. After this, the young count headed towards the exit of his room. He said that he intended to leave this prison immediately in order to regain a normal life. A few moments later, the moment of truth arrived, and Vincent Bellunita walked out into the hallway, slamming the door behind him. The young count's best friend and his personal maid are watching everything that is happening and are very happy with what they are seeing. Eden Christopher laughed heartily when Vincent Bellunita left his room. The young nobleman felt light in his heart because he was happy for his friend. He had not even thought that everything would go so quickly and smoothly. Vincent Bellunita walked around his house for a while and returned to his room a few minutes later. He had had enough walking for today. Eden Christopher said he had a surprise for his friend. The young aristocrat took a letter from a girl named Violet out of his pocket and said that it was addressed to a blind count. Eden Christopher handed the letter to his best friend and said that Violet wanted to visit Vincent Bellunita, but he talked her out of it. The young aristocrat did not want the girl to see the blind count in such a terrible state. Now the owner of the estate will have to write the girl a response to her message, or she will come in person next time to visit the young nobleman. The main character watches the aristocrats carefully, who talk about a girl named Violet. The maid remembered that letters for Vincent Bellunita were constantly coming from this lady. The gentleman ordered Paula to bring a sheet of paper and ink immediately. He wants to write a reply letter to Violet. The main character said that she would do everything right away. The maid went out into the corridor to carry out Vincent Bellunita's order, and immediately remembered that she had not sorted the mail that came to the blind count for several days. This was simply unacceptable. This omission must be corrected immediately. It was evening. The main character lay down on her desk, exhausted, after sorting through all the mail that had accumulated over several days. It took a lot of energy from the girl, but she managed. Paula realized that while Eden Christopher was at the Bellunite estate, no letters from the mysterious addressee had arrived. So everything matched. The young aristocrat was the author of these mysterious messages. The main character is very happy that she managed to reveal this secret that tormented her for a long time. Now everything became clear to her. Eden Christopher sent short messages to her friend. Wrong. They have such a special game with Vincent Bellunita. But then the girl changes her mind. She realizes that Eden Christopher doesn't need to hide his identity to write a letter. Besides, he won't cry and leave his tears on paper. Suddenly, in the dark corridor next to the main character, who was completely immersed in her thoughts, Eden Christopher appeared. He scared the girl very much because he appeared suddenly. The main character's heart almost jumped out of her chest. She came to her senses a little and told the young aristocrat that she was already tired of his jokes. After all, you can't scare people so unceremoniously. Eden Christopher said that the maid could scold him as much as she wanted. He would not be offended by her. The young nobleman smiled meaningfully and said that he had warned the girl that he was a bad man. After that, the blind count's best friend said that today was a rather cool and windy evening. Probably the weather would change abruptly soon. Eden Christopher, like a true gentleman, threw his jacket over the main character's shoulders so that she wouldn't freeze. The girl noticed that the weather had really changed for the worse. Paula thanked her interlocutor and said that she was a very good person, although sometimes she behaved rather strangely. but Eden Christopher knew how to love his friends and took great care of them. The young man was very happy when he heard these words. The main character added that she did not approve of her interlocutor's methods when he influenced the blind count. But the girl had to agree that Eden Christopher's psychological techniques were effective. The young aristocrat smiled meaningfully at his interlocutor and said that one day Vincent Bellunita would understand his methods and thank his best friend for the help he had provided. After this, Eden Christopher became sad for a moment because he thought about the future fate of the blind count. The young aristocrat really wants his best friend to change the way he wants. The main character looked at her interlocutor carefully and said that he should not be sad. She is sure that everything will be fine with Vincent Bellunita. He will be able to overcome his phobias and illnesses. The first steps for this have already been taken. Now the maid began to think about her future. The girl was concerned about the answer to one simple question. Will the young master fire her if he recovers and no longer needs the services of a nurse? The main character remembered her master. She thought that it suited the blind count very well when he was in a good mood and smiling. But the girl is very afraid that Vincent Bellunita will refuse her services and fire her. Then the main character will have nowhere to go. These thoughts cause real panic in Paula. Eden Christopher looked at his interlocutor carefully and asked what she had decided about her wish, which the young aristocrat must fulfill. He had lost the bet he had made with the girl. Now he was obliged to fulfill any of her wishes. The young man sincerely wants to fulfill his promise to the main character. But for this, the girl must voice her desire. The young aristocrat said that he can do anything. He has enough power and resources for this. The main character completely forgot about this bet. She told her interlocutor that she did not know what wish he should fulfill. She needed time to think about this question. The maid's biggest worry now is that Vincent Bellunita might kick her out of his estate if he no longer needs her personal care. This thought breaks the girl's heart. The main character thought about her possible prospects and immediately came up with a wish that Eden Christopher should fulfill. The girl told the young aristocrat that she wanted to cooperate with him on equal terms. These words surprised the young man very much. Paula explained that she wanted to build her relationship with the young aristocrat in such a way that they would effectively interact and help each other in all endeavors, and also maintain constant contact with each other. Eden Christopher was surprised by such a simple wish of the girl and suggested that she come up with something more complicated. But Paula refused this offer and said that this was quite enough for her. The main character honestly and openly admitted to her interlocutor that she wants to stay in her master's estate forever. But to do this, she needs the help of her master's best friend. The girl added that otherwise she would have nowhere to go. She is very afraid of being left on the street if Vincent Bellunita recovers and no longer needs her services. Eden Christopher looked at his interlocutor carefully and said that he had never thought that such a development of events was even possible. The whole situation seemed very strange. The young aristocrat thought for a moment and said that from now on the main character could count on his support, no matter what happened in the future. After that, Eden Christopher and Paula sealed their agreement with a firm handshake. The young man looked his ally in the eyes and said that he really liked her wish. This shows that Paula has a big and kind heart of a worthy and noble person. A new day has dawned. The weather is wonderful. Warm sunlight floods the whole area. Eden Christopher is leaving for his home today because he has visited his friend and helped him as much as he could. Now the soul of the aristocrat is free from guilt. The main character helps a young aristocrat carry his suitcases to the luxurious car in which he arrived at his best friend's estate. It is quite a heavy load, but Paula is no stranger to carrying heavy things. Eden Christopher wished Paula good luck and apologized if he had caused her any unnecessary inconvenience. But the girl was very happy to have met her master's best friend and to have formed a useful alliance with him. The main character told the young aristocrat that it was an honor to serve him. Eden Christopher smiled sweetly at his assistant and politely said goodbye to her, wishing her all the best. The young man got into his luxurious car. The main character decided to ask Eden Christopher one last time if he often wrote letters to Vincent Bellunita. This question puzzled the young aristocrat a little. The young nobleman thought about his answer for a few seconds and said that he used to write letters to his best friend very often. But recently, he began to do it much less often. The main character began to be tormented by strange guesses again when she heard the answer of her interlocutor. This needs to be clarified immediately, so as not to remain in error. The girl decided to ask Eden Christopher if he wrote his messages to Vincent Bellunita in gold ink. Perhaps the young aristocrat had such a habit because he loved the bright life. Eden Christopher smiled mysteriously at the main character and said that he always uses only regular ink. The girl looks closely at the young aristocrat and understands that he is not telling her something, but there was no point in asking any more questions. So Pola thanked Eden Christopher for all the good he had done for her and Vincent Bellunita. After that, the main character wished the nobleman a good journey. Eden Christopher said goodbye to everyone and ordered his driver to start the car. Now the young aristocrat is heading to his native estate, where his loving family is waiting for him. When Eden Christopher's car had moved so far away that it disappeared from sight, the main character looked at the windows of her master's room and saw Vincent Bellunita. The young count stands by the window, trying to catch with his sensitive hearing all the sounds coming from the outside world. Vincent Bellunita can't see anything, but he hears the sound of a car driving away and realizes that his best friend has left the estate. After Eden Christopher's departure, life in the outbuilding returned to normal and went on as usual. But after a few days, an unexpected event occurred. The main character was sorting through her master's mail and saw a new letter from a mysterious addressee, written in gold ink. The mysterious addressee sent not only a short letter, but also a small iron can containing tea with a wonderful aroma. Paula opened the jar of tea and sniffed it to enjoy the wonderful aroma of the tea leaves. The girl did not expect that this type of tea smelled so nice. It was a great gift. The main character showed Isabella a gift sent by a mysterious addressee. The house manager carefully examined the item and said that the maid could safely hand it over to Vincent Bellunite. A few minutes later, Paula brewed a new aromatic tea and brought it to her master to cheer him up a little and tell him about the gift that had been sent to him today. Vincent Bellunita tasted the aromatic tea and said that he was familiar with this type of drink. This is a special black tea that is produced in the Novella estate. It is famous for its quality and wonderful aroma throughout the kingdom. The main character listened attentively to her master and was very surprised when he accurately named the type of tea she had prepared for him today. The girl asked the blind count how he knew this. Vincent Bellunita did not answer his maid. He drank some more tea and asked where the maid had gotten it. The girl replied that this tea had been sent today as a gift to the blind count. The main character noticed that the young gentleman really liked this wonderful tea from the Novella estate. The young man became much calmer when he drank almost the entire cup of aromatic drink. For a second, Vincent Bellunita reminded the girl of a contented kitten who ate his favorite treat. Pola decided from that day on to brew only this tea for her master. When the main character returned to her room, she wrote a letter to the mysterious addressee thanking him for the tea he had sent. A few days later, the girl received several large jars and bags of tea from the Novella estate. The mysterious addressee wrote a cover letter, which said that if Vincent Bellunate needed more tea, he only had to write about it and he would receive another parcel. This greatly surprised the main character. The girl cannot understand who the mysterious addressee is and why he constantly sends letters and gifts to her master. This mystery makes the main character nervous. The main character is worried that the mysterious addressee will be offended if he finds out that, in fact, it is not Vincent Bellunita who is answering his letters, but his personal maid. Pola decided to visit her master and help him change his clothes. The girl told Vincent Bellunite not to throw various objects and not to break the windows in his room. The blind count answered the main character that it was not her concern. Vincent Bellunita added that his personal maid should no longer allow Eden Christopher and other visitors into the house. These words surprised the girl very much. The main character asked her master why he was not happy that his best friend visited him. Was it really so unpleasant for the blind count? The girl thought that Eden Christopher and Vincent Bellunita had already made peace and that everything would be fine in their relationship. But the main character was wrong about that. The blind count is hostile towards his best friend again. The young gentleman thought for a moment and said that he hated Eden Christopher's family. The main character was very surprised and puzzled by these words. She did not expect to hear such a thing from Vincent Bellunita. Paula asked the gentleman what Eden Christopher's family had done to the blind count and why he hated them so much. But the young man said nothing and pulled his blanket over his head again. Vincent Bellunita thought for a moment and told his personal maid that it was because of his best friend's family that he became a helpless invalid. The main character was very surprised when she heard these words. Paula thought that this simply couldn't be happening. Perhaps the young gentleman had another nervous breakdown, but this time with hallucinations. It all sounded very strange and implausible. Vincent Bellunita told the maid to leave his room immediately. He wanted to be alone for a while. But the main character was determined. The girl asked her master to tell her how his illness was connected to Eden Christopher's family. Paula told the blind count that it was very important to her. Such information could not be kept secret from loved ones. Otherwise, it could harm a good relationship. Vincent Bellunita thought for a moment and said that his best friend still didn't know that his family played a decisive role in the young count going blind and locking himself in his room. The main character's master added that he wanted to tell Eden Christopher about this during a personal meeting, but he did not have the strength to do so. The girl does not understand what really happened in her master's past life, that he is so offended by his best friend's family. She wants to know the details of this secret. The main character calmed down a little and began to think clearly. The girl had a terrible thought that Eden Christopher's relatives had poisoned her master secretly from his best friend. Vincent Bellunita said that some secrets must die with him and threw his maid out of the room. The girl stands in the corridor and feels great fear. The main character thinks what to do next with this secret. She understands that she must keep her mouth shut. Otherwise, a cruel punishment will follow. Paula now feels very lonely and confused. From that day on, she never asked her master about this terrible secret. Perhaps Vincent Bellunita is absolutely right that some secrets must die with their masters. The main character continues to faithfully fulfill her duties and serve her young master, who trusts and becomes more attached to her every day. The next morning came, and it was a beautiful sunny day, perfect for going out to the park, getting some fresh air and listening to the birds singing. The main character came to her young master's room to wake him up and feed him a delicious and nutritious breakfast. But the girl met desperate resistance from the young nobleman, who does not want to wake up. Vincent Bellunita has started acting up again. He covers himself with his sheet and tries to resist his personal maid, but Paula insists that the blind count needs to have breakfast. The main character also added that the young gentleman had sweated heavily at night, so he urgently needed to wash himself to remove the unpleasant body odor. Paula is very determined. The girl does not want to lose her job, so she forces Vincent Bellunita to take care of his hygiene and proper nutrition. The blind count stands before a basin of warm water and wonders why he should wash himself if he might soon die in his confinement. It all just doesn't make sense. The young aristocrat was distracted from his sad thoughts and turned to his personal maid. The young man said that he understood everything, and the girl could leave the room so that Vincent Bellunita could wash himself in peace. The main character was very surprised when she heard these words. The girl cannot believe that her ward is taking the initiative and is ready to take care of himself. Will Vincent Bellunita really be able to take a bath and have breakfast without breaking a plate or a cup? The blind count did not answer his personal maid. The young aristocrat disregarded all the rules of decency and began to take off his shirt to take a bath. The main character hurried to the exit of the gentleman's room, but she managed to look at the naked torso of Vincent Bellunita. The girl was convinced that her efforts were not in vain. The blind count again acquired a good shape and gained some weight. Paula also noticed that almost all the bruises and abrasions on her master's body, which had so disfigured him recently, had disappeared. But now everything is in perfect order. It's just wonderful. Vincent Bellunita noticed his personal maid, who paused at the exit of the room to get a better look at her master. The blind count heard the girl's rapid breathing and cursed her for her slowness. The main character immediately left the young master's chambers and began eavesdropping in the corridor as Vincent Bellunita took water treatments. It may be that the blind nobleman will need urgent help from his personal servant. The girl still can't believe that her ward agreed to take a bath so easily. This must be checked so that the cunning count does not deceive his maid. After the water procedures, the young aristocrat ate his entire nutritious and delicious breakfast, which the main character prepared for him herself. The girl remembered how she had recently told the kitchen staff that Vincent Bellunita had been eating very well lately and had a great appetite. The chef had tears in his eyes after these words from great joy for the gentleman. Isabella is also very pleased with the work of the main character. She told the young master's personal maid to continue working as diligently and efficiently. This brings many positive results. The main character decided to take a short walk. Today, her charge is behaving calmly and can take care of himself. Besides, the weather is beautiful outside. The girl looks at the blue sky, where there is not a single cloud. She thinks that it would be sad if such a wonderful day were to pass in vain. At this moment, the main character is struck by a brilliant idea. The girl wants to have tea with Vincent Bellunita in the Count's Park. This will speed up the recovery of the blind aristocrat. The main character returned to Vincent Bellunita's room and suggested that they go out into the garden and have a wonderful tea party there, which perfectly lifts the mood and relaxes the nervous system. The blind count, as always, resisted the offer of his personal maid. Vincent Bellunita said that he could not go out on the street because no one should see him in such a deplorable state. The main character said that they could choose a special place where no one would see them. The young aristocrat doubts that such a place exists in his luxurious garden. The blind count's maid said that she would solve this issue without any problems and would carry the young aristocrat on herself if necessary. But now the girl only needs Vincent Bellunita's consent. The blind aristocrat agreed to his maid's proposal, and a few minutes later, the main character was already carrying the feeble gentleman on her shoulders so that he could go outside and breathe some fresh air. Vincent Bellunita noticed that it was very difficult for the girl to carry him. In addition, the movement was slowed down by the fact that the young aristocrat's feet were dragging on the ground. The blind count sees that his maid is not up to the task. The nobleman begins to ask the girl to return him to his room and leave him alone. Vincent Bellunita is no longer glad that he agreed to this stupid adventure. Suddenly, the main character stopped moving and put her charge on his feet. After that, the girl said that they had come to the right place, where no one would notice them. The young nobleman was surprised by the endurance and strength of his servant. The blind count asked what this place was where the maid had brought him. The girl replied that they were now in the garden behind the outbuilding. She had tidied up the place and prepared everything for tea. No one ever came here. Suddenly, the young aristocrat remembered this place, which he loved from the early years of his life. The blind count was immersed in pleasant memories of his family's past. Vincent Bellunita also remembered his best friend Eden Christopher and his girlfriend, whose name is Violet. Those were the wonderful times when they drank tea right there. A blind aristocrat sits at the table and indulges in pleasant memories of his friends and old times. The main character has prepared everything for tea and a wonderful time. The maid looks at her charge attentively and tries not to distract him from pleasant thoughts. The girl understands that her idea was quite successful. Now she needs to offer the gentleman some tea. The maid poured a cup of aromatic tea from the Novella estate for the young nobleman and handed it to the youth. Vincent Bellunita carefully took his cup and took a few sips of the drink. The blind count said that this tea is very tasty and healthy, and it also calms the nervous system and gives a slight cheerfulness. It is simply a wonderful drink that is suitable for all occasions. The main character looked at her master carefully to understand what mood he was in. The girl said that she wanted to read a book to the blind count in the fresh air today, if he did not mind. The girl said that today she would read to her charge a very interesting adventure novel that Eden Christopher had recommended to her. The main character believes that such books will now be very useful for the blind count, who is constantly in deep depression. Adventures on the pages of books will help the sadness of the young aristocrat to dissipate. A few minutes passed. Paula was engrossed in reading a novel recommended to her by her new friend, Eden Christopher, and the blind count was listening to his personal maid read and enjoying aromatic tea from the Novella estate. Suddenly, Vincent Bellunita stopped his personal maid and thoughtfully asked the girl what she looked like. The blind count wants the main character to describe her appearance in detail. Paula froze in surprise. The girl did not expect to hear such a question from her blind master. The main character is interested in why the young aristocrat began to take an interest in the appearance of his maid. Vincent Bellunita looks towards his interlocutor, trying to make out something. But at the moment, he sees only a blurry silhouette of the main character. The young man is burning with impatience. The nobleman really wants to know what the girl who helps him and cares for him looks like. The eyes of the blind aristocrat may now be blind, but his mind is beginning to recover, and Vincent Bellunite's rich imagination is gradually returning. The main character was very embarrassed and confused when the young gentleman asked her to describe her appearance and face. The girl always thought that she was very ugly, so she does not know how to tell the young aristocrat about it. Paula thought for a moment and said that she would rather continue reading the adventure novel. It would be much more interesting for her master at the moment, but Vincent Bellunita continues to insist on his own. Suddenly, the young aristocrat reached forward and touched his fingers to his maid's face. This made the girl freeze in place. The main character felt the gentle touch of the blind count and immediately jumped up from the table. This made the girl nervous because she is very afraid that the gentleman will find out about her ugliness. Paula wants to scold her interlocutor for behaving so tactlessly with the girl. But the words freeze on the lips of the main character. She is simply choking with anger and resentment towards Vincent Bellunita. The girl noticed that her chair had fallen onto the grass when she got up from the table. Paula bent down to pick up the chair and recovered a little from her angry fit. The main character hurried to apologize to her master for such inadequate behavior on her part. Vincent Bellunita cannot understand why Pola reacted so sharply to his actions. The girl is very ashamed of herself and her reaction. She said that she does not like it when someone touches her face without permission. That's how her life turned out. She has had this thing since childhood. The blind count said that he could see his maid's face only with his hands. Therefore, the girl should not be offended by her master for his actions. These are simply the circumstances that Vincent Bellunita is unable to change at the moment. The young aristocrat added that he very much hoped for understanding from his personal maid. The girl herself saw how hard it was for a blind person to live in this world. The gentleman asked his maid once again what she looked like now. The main character answered Vincent Bellunite that she had an ordinary face. But this answer was not enough for the nobleman. He wanted a more detailed description. Vincent Bellunita paused for a moment and added that the girl should not hide her appearance from him, because this circumstance only increases his interest in this matter. The main character can't resist any longer, so she decides to tell her master about herself. The girl said that she is of average height and has chestnut hair that falls below her chest. This intrigued Vincent Bellunita. The blind count decided to touch his personal maid's face again to get to know its features even better. Vincent Bellunita has very sensitive and delicate fingers. After this, the young aristocrat decided to touch his maid's hair. From the outside, it may look a little strange. But now the blind count has some idea of his subordinate's appearance. Vincent Bellunita asked the main character to continue her story about her appearance. The young nobleman had not yet received as complete a description as he would have liked to hear. The girl is very embarrassed to tell the gentleman about her appearance. Pola understands that now she will have to tell Vincent Bellunita that she has an ugly face that frightens those around her. The main character decided to take a breath and think about her answer. She is afraid to describe all the details of her appearance, but the owner insists on it. The girl urgently needs to figure out what to do in this situation. Pola began her story by recalling her childhood. She said that she had always been shorter and smaller than her peers due to poor nutrition and a huge number of various household chores. The main character decided to tell her master the whole truth about her appearance at once. The girl said that her body was always covered with bruises and abrasions due to constant beatings by her drunken father. Her hair was thin and brittle due to a lack of vitamins. Paula's face has been covered with a large number of freckles since birth. In addition, the main character was called an ugly dwarf by her peers. The maid added that she had a younger sister named Alicia. She had always been a beautiful girl, and Paula had been very jealous of her since childhood because of her beautiful appearance. The girl remembered that everyone around her always loved Alicia. Her father never beat his youngest daughter and gave her many gifts. The main character could only dream of such happiness. Even Alicia's disgusting character was considered by everyone to be a special feature that gives her charm and charisma. It's just disgusting. But only Paula thinks so, and no one else in the world. The main character was scolded by the people around her for any misdeed and every little thing that could happen even by chance. The girl drank the cup of human misunderstanding and contempt to the very bottom. Paula remembered how she had to humiliate herself in front of her tyrannical father, who did not love her and constantly took out his anger on the unfortunate girl. The father of the main character always loved only Alicia, his youngest daughter, who was distinguished by her beauty. Pola could do nothing about it and continued to drag out her miserable existence in the house of a cruel tyrant. But Vincent Bellunita's maid knows that one day her little sister will pay dearly for having such a beautiful face. Her alcoholic father will definitely take advantage of this and sell his youngest daughter to earn money for another dose of alcohol. Unhappy Alicia doesn't even suspect what awaits her in the future. But the main character is not very worried about this. She believes that everyone in this life gets only what they deserve. Next to her beautiful sister, the main character always looked like a very ugly girl. But now Paula has a great chance to change her life for the better and get ahead in life. The blind count's personal maid finished her sad story and fell silent. Vincent Bellunita listened attentively to his maid and thought about her story. Pola is now sure that the blind nobleman will despise her after he found out that she is ugly and has always been humiliated by everyone. But the young master thinks otherwise. The main character thought for a while and decided to deceive her blind master a little. The girl embellished her appearance, relying on the description of her younger sister Alicia. Let it be considered a dishonest act. But the personal maid of a blind count needs to somehow survive in this cruel and unpredictable world. And for this, all means are good. The main character covered her face with her hands. She really doesn't want to deceive her master, but the girl has no other choice. Paula described Alicia's appearance and said that this is how she looks. Vincent Bellunita was somewhat confused when he listened to his personal maid's story. The blind count said that Paula must be a very modest girl if she was afraid to tell him that she was a real beauty. But the young aristocrat is quite pleased with what he has just heard. Vincent Bellunita drank some aromatic tea from the novella estate and said that he liked the fact that Paula was a beautiful girl. The main character is very ashamed that she deceived her young master, who only recently began to trust her and opened his soul. But such is the harsh reality, and there is no place for tears. The girl is tormented by doubts about whether she has done the right thing now, but there is no time to think about it at the moment. She needs to finish her tea party with the young gentleman. Suddenly, Vincent Bellunita noticed that the main character was short. He realized this completely when the girl dragged the blind count on her into the garden, his feet dragging on the ground. The young aristocrat's personal maid doesn't know why he mentioned her short stature. Maybe Vincent Bellunita guesses that the main character is trying to deceive him. But the maid noticed another important circumstance. The girl noticed that Vincent Bellunita was in a great mood and laughing. She had never seen him so cheerful. Perhaps the magic tea and fresh air had such a beneficial effect on the blind count. The main character did not expect that drinking tea in the fresh air would be so useful for a young aristocrat who suffers from depression. It was a very good idea. The maid decided that she also needed to relax a little and laughed heartily, looking at the cheerful Vincent Bellunita, who was enjoying the aromatic tea from the mysterious addressee. The blind count's personal maid continues to care for his precious health. The girl said that she could bring the young aristocrat a blanket or coat if he felt cold in the fresh air. Vincent Bellunita replied that he felt fine. When the young aristocrat had finished his soothing tea, he placed the cup on the table and informed his personal maid that he wanted to stretch his legs and take a stroll through his luxurious park. Vincent Bellunita had not walked here for a long time. The main character was a little surprised by such an original desire of the young gentleman, because recently he was afraid that someone would see him in the park. But now he is not afraid of this at all. The maid said that she would be happy to help her master walk around his domain so that he could stretch his legs a little after drinking tea. Paula got up from the table and went to the young gentleman to help him up and stand on his feet. The blind count tries to do everything himself, and he does it quite well. The main character holds Vincent Bellunita's hand. The maid and her young master walk slowly along a shady alley and enjoy the wonderful weather, as well as listen to the enchanting singing of birds. Today indeed was a beautiful day. The girl looked at her master attentively and said that they could walk like that sometimes to breathe fresh air. But Vincent Bellunita said that he did not want that. The blind count added that they might meet someone in this park. This could become another problem that would complicate the current situation. No one needs this now. The main character prudently looked around and said that there was no one here. If the girl saw someone, she would definitely tell her master about it, and he would have time to hide somewhere. Vincent Bellunita holds his personal maid's hand. This allows him to move freely around his luxurious park. The young aristocrat said that this place was always deserted, which is why he loved to play here as a child with his best friend Eden Christopher and a girl named Violet. The main character listened carefully to her interlocutor and said that she had always been very curious to know who this girl named Violet was. This question slightly embarrassed Vincent Bellunita. The young aristocrat was silent for a while and said that he did not yet know whether he should tell his maid about Violet. It was a rather sad topic of conversation. Finally, the blind count was ready for this conversation and told his interlocutor that a girl named Violet was once his fiancée, whom he loved very much. But fate deprived the young aristocrat of his sight, and now he cannot meet with her. This information shocked the main character. The girl still did not know that the young aristocrat had a fiancé whom he loved very much. She does not understand why the blind count did not tell about such an important person in his life. Vincent Bellunita was a little embarrassed because he doesn't like to talk about it. The main character pulled herself together and began to reason soberly. It was no surprise that such a handsome nobleman had a fiancé. The maid now understood everything completely. Violet wrote sad romantic letters to her fiancé, to which he did not answer for a long time. Vincent Bellunita had only recently sent a message to his bride. The young aristocrat thought for a moment and said that his fiancé did not know that he had become blind and a real invalid. Therefore, the maid would have to send Lady Violet back if she showed up at the Bellunite estate. The young nobleman smiled meaningfully and said that his bride did not need to know about the groom's blindness. If Lady Violet found out that her future husband had become an invalid, she would immediately break off the engagement. This could not be allowed. Vincent Bellunita added that he did not marry his bride out of love. This political union was concluded to strengthen the bond between two aristocratic families. If the engagement is broken, it will cause irreparable damage to both noble clans, who will suffer greatly from it. But the Bellunite family will suffer the most. Therefore, it will be much better if the truth is revealed as late as possible. The main character listened attentively to her master and said that she would definitely remember his instructions. The girl also thought that it was very difficult to be an aristocrat. Vincent Bellunita looked at his interlocutor carefully and said that she did not have to feel sorry for him because of the current situation. The young nobleman did not want to look like a pathetic whiner. The blind count reminded his personal maid that Eden Christopher's family had crippled him. There were some treacherous political games at play that the maid was better off not knowing about. The main character smiled and pretended not to understand. Vincent Bellunita thought for a moment and said that he wanted to go back to his outbuilding. He had already had enough of walking. The maid supported her master. But suddenly a handkerchief flew out of the basket the maid was holding in her hand because a cool wind blew. The main character noticed this and immediately chased the handkerchief to return it and put it back in the basket. Vincent Bellunita stands still and listens to the sounds of the pursuit of the handkerchief. The maid moved away from her charge so as not to lose sight of him. But this frightened Vincent Bellunita a little, who was not yet accustomed to being alone in the open air. Gradually, the main character goes deeper and deeper into the park thickets, forgetting that the young gentleman is left all alone. It seems to the girl that the pursuit of the handkerchief will not take much time, and she will quickly return to the blind count. Paula almost caught up with the white scarf, which was carried away by a gust of cool wind. The girl thought that she had already reached her goal. But everything went wrong at the last moment. The scarf flew further again, caught by a new whirlwind. Several minutes have passed, and the main character still hasn't caught up with the ill-fated scarf. It's worth noting that the maid has already noticeably moved away from her charge, leaving him completely alone in the dense park thickets. Finally, the moment came when the white handkerchief stopped because it was hanging by chance on a tree branch. The maid hurried to take off this rag and quickly returned to her master. The main character decided to take a breather and rest a little to gather her strength after a fast run. Suddenly, the girl noticed that someone wanted to take her scarf from the tree. Paula came to her senses and looked at the mysterious stranger who had taken her scarf from the tree branch. The girl was very surprised because this was a rather remote place and no one should walk here. The young man, who appears to be an aristocrat, holds a white veil in his hand and smiles mysteriously. The mysterious stranger looked closely at the main character and decided to get to know her better. The whole situation seems very funny to the young aristocrat. The young man handed the girl the white blanket she had been chasing after so quickly. After that, the young aristocrat greeted the main character and said that he was very glad to see her here. Paula did not expect such a turn of events. The girl looks at the mysterious young man who returned her white veil. She does not know this aristocrat, but something about him seemed familiar to her. The main character looked closely at the strange stranger and asked him to forgive her for having a very ugly face and for him having to look at her now. But the young aristocrat said that Paula was quite a beautiful girl. For the first time in her life, the girl hears such words from a man. She cannot believe her ears. Could this young man really be joking with her? This simply cannot be. The main character was very confused when she heard a compliment from a handsome aristocrat. It almost drove the girl crazy. She tries to answer the young man, but she can't. So Paula said that she urgently needs to run to her master, whom she left all alone in the dense thickets of a vast park. The girl wants to take her white blanket from the hands of a handsome stranger. Paula accidentally touched his fingers, and she really liked the feeling she experienced. After that, the main character quickly ran back to her master, whom she had recently left on the park alley all alone. The girl is very worried, and her breathing often gets out of rhythm. The main character paused to catch her breath and noticed that a letter written in gold ink was wrapped in a white blanket. The message stated that the author wanted to go on a trip. Paula did not expect such a turn of events. The girl read the letter from the mysterious addressee and realized that she had just met him in the middle of the Count's park. It was all very strange. The main character turned around to look at the handsome stranger once more. But it turned out that the young aristocrat was no longer in his former place. He suddenly disappeared somewhere, without saying a single word to the girl. A few minutes later, the maid returned to her master and immediately offered her sincere apologies for such a long absence. The girl said that she had met a mysterious stranger in the bushes of the park. But Vincent Bellunita did not listen to his personal maid. He was now very angry with the girl for leaving him alone for so long among the park thickets. The young aristocrat was very scared. The blind count said that Paula had no right to do this to him. If the girl did it again, she would be severely punished for it. Perhaps she would even lose her miserable life. When Vincent Bellunita's emotions had calmed down a bit, he went to his maid and hugged her. After that, the blind count told the girl to never leave him alone again. Otherwise, he would be in a very bad way. The main character also hugged her ward to calm him down and bring him back to order. The girl understands that she did wrong, and now she is overcome by a deep sense of guilt before the master. Vincent Bellunita took his maid by the hand and told her once again that she should always be by his side. Without the main character, the blind count begins to have panic attacks and bouts of paranoia. The girl is very hurt by what is happening to her master now. The main character once again sincerely asked the young nobleman for forgiveness for her carelessness and stupidity. Paula hugged her master even tighter and said that she was very sorry. The girl would never leave Vincent Bellunita alone again. The young people stand, embracing each other in the middle of the park alley. They are silent because everything has already been said, and the essence of things is clear without unnecessary words. The main character noticed that Vincent Bellunita's hands are very hot right now. A few minutes later, the blind count told his personal maid that he was very tired today and wanted to return home quickly. The main character supported her master's wish, and they both headed to the count's wing. When the young people returned home after a walk in the fresh air, they were met by Isabella, who seemed very excited. The main character and Vincent Bellunita look closely at the angry house manager and understand that perhaps now they will both receive a severe reprimand for their long absence in an unknown direction. The main character was the first to speak to Isabella. The girl tried to calm the manager down so that she wouldn't get too upset and offended that she hadn't been warned about the walk in the park. Vincent Bellunita intervened in the conversation. The blind count asked his housekeeper why she was so upset now. Maybe something had happened to her. Isabella calmed her emotions a little and began to think more soberly. The manager understands that it is necessary to observe subordination in any situation. She has no right to scold her master. After that, the woman said that she had urgent news. Unexpected guests arrived to visit Vincent Bellunita. At this moment, Lady Violet appeared in the hall accompanied by a young aristocrat. The girl is very happy to see her fiancé. She greeted Vincent Bellunita and looks at him with surprise. Lady Violet looks closely at the blind count and realizes that he has changed a lot since their last meeting. Vincent Bellunita has lost a lot of weight and looks ill. There was an awkward pause for a few seconds. Someone had to break the unpleasant silence. Otherwise, this situation would not only be awkward, but also funny. The main character holds her ward's hand and looks closely at his fiancé, who decided to visit her fiancé without warning. The girl thought that all this could have a bad effect on the blind count's condition. Lady Violet broke the awkward silence that reigned in the hall of the wing. The girl said that she missed her fiancé very much, so she came to him in person to see him and to testify her love. Vincent Bellunita did not expect such a turn of events. The experienced aristocrat understands that his bride's visit did not happen by chance. There is some evil intent of enemies here. The blind count squeezed his maid's hand tightly to give her a sign. By this, he wants to tell Paula that she needs to think of something urgently to avoid a date with Lady Violet. The main character immediately understood her master's hint and decided to help him in such a difficult situation. But to do this, she will have to use the surprise effect. The maid has come up with a very simple but effective plan to avoid meeting Vincent Bellunita's fiancé. The main character gathers her thoughts and strength to make this plan a reality. A few seconds later, Paula grabbed her master's hand tightly and shouted loudly for him to run after her quickly. The maid then dragged Vincent Bellunita along with her. Lady Violet, Isabella, and the young nobleman did not expect this turn of events. They look at Vincent Bellunita and his maid. They quickly run down the hall in the opposite direction from the guests. The guests and the housekeeper don't understand what's going on. But the main character is quite happy with her plan because it worked well. After some time, everyone gathered together again to drink tea. But this time, the meeting took place without Vincent Bellunita. Lady Violet cannot understand why her fiancé is absent. Vincent Bellunita's bride is a very noble and well-bred lady. Many of the kingdom's most distinguished suitors would give a great deal to win the girl's heart, but she belongs to the heroine's master. Paula looks at Lady Violet attentively and can't stop admiring her. This young aristocrat is so beautiful that she can decorate any society with her person. For a moment, the main character thought that her young master's beautiful bride was not made of human flesh, but was made of white sugar. The maid brought sweets for tea and again lingered her gaze on the irresistible Lady Violet. The main character understands that she will never become such a beautiful girl, but she can admire her to her heart's content. Lady Violet smiled at the maid and thanked her for the treat. The main character realized that this lady was not only very beautiful, but also had excellent manners and upbringing. The maid apologized for her awkwardness and rude behavior in the hall. The guest did not pay any attention to this and continued to communicate calmly with Isabella. The main character approached Lady Violet to treat her with sweets. Vincent Bellunida's fiancé smiled sweetly at the maid and told her that she was probably new here. The young aristocrat added that she was not at all angry with Paula for what she had done in the Hall of the Wing. Perhaps Lady Violet herself was to blame for this, because she had arrived without warning. The blind count's bride introduced herself to the main character. She said that her name was Violet Margaret. The lady also added that she had heard a lot about Vincent's personal maid Bellunida from his best friend Eden Christopher. Lady Violet laughed and said that she liked Paula very much because she was a very sweet and efficient girl. Everything that Eden Christopher had said about her turned out to be true. These words knocked the main character down. The girl did not expect that Violet Margaret would turn out to be not only very beautiful, but also a kind lady. From that moment on, Paula fell in love with her master's bride. The housekeeper and Eden Christopher, who had arrived at the estate with Lady Violet, invited Paula to sit down with them and chat about various topics. The main character sat down on the sofa next to Vincent Bellunida's best friend. The young aristocrat greeted the girl and said that he was very glad to see her again in good health. Violet Margaret turned to Isabella and said that her fiancé seemed fine considering what she had heard about his illness. The girl thought that it would be much worse. Eden Christopher whispered to the protagonist that Lady Violet thinks Vincent Bellunida is recovering from his injury. She knows nothing about her fiancé's blindness. Suddenly, Vincent Bellunida's fiancé became very sad. The girl was very upset that she could not see her fiancé, whom she missed very much. The aristocrat jumped up from her seat and grabbed Vincent Bellunida's personal maid by the hands. Lady Violet said that she begged Paula to ask her master for a personal meeting with his bride. This was very important for a girl who felt abandoned. The main character would really like to help her master's bride, but she can't do it. Otherwise, there will be very bad consequences not only for Vincent Bellunida, but also for his bride. Paula looked at Isabella to ask her for advice or a hint. But the housekeeper continues to drink her tea calmly and pretends not to notice anything. The same goes for Eden Christopher. The main character feels abandoned and lonely. The girl cannot understand why no one helps her calm down Lady Violet and make her not ask for a date with her fiancé. After this terrible tea party, Paula decided to visit her ward and tell him the words of his fiancé. It would be right. Paula entered Vincent Bellunida's room. He was hiding under the blanket as usual. The girl said that she had to give her master an important message from his fiancé. After this, the blind count's personal maid accurately quoted Lady Violet's tearful request for a meeting with Vincent Bellunida. Paula added that her master's fiancé did not care at all what state his face was in at the moment. Suddenly, the blind count's best friend, Eden Christopher, appeared in his chambers. He greeted Vincent Bellunida cheerfully and asked how he had been doing since his last visit. The heroine's master stared at the intruder and told him to get out of his chambers immediately. Otherwise, Eden Christopher would regret it very much. He had better do as the master of this house says. The best friend hastened to calm Vincent Bellunida. He said that he was not guilty of anything before him. The young aristocrat did not know that Lady Violet would want to come to the estate in person to see her fiancé. Eden Christopher added that Vincent Bellunida's letter was to blame. When Lady Violet received news from her fiancé, she could not restrain herself and rushed to her beloved. The young aristocrat and her nanny tried to stop Lady Violet, but it was absolutely useless. No one has ever in the history of mankind been able to stop a girl who flies on the wings of love for her beloved. Vincent Bellunida listened attentively to his best friend and became even more angry with him. The blind count took an empty glass and prepared to throw it at the head of Eden Christopher, who had prudently hidden behind the maid. After this, the young aristocrat told the main character that she had behaved very decently in the hall when she had saved her master from an unwanted date with his fiancé. This was worthy of admiration and all kinds of praise. Vincent Bellunida did not throw a glass at his friend and said that he agreed with him. Paula showed herself in the hall only from the best side. Her intelligence can only be envied. Eden Christopher continued his flirting with the main character, hugging her. But the girl did not like this behavior of the young aristocrat. She wants her master's best friend to calm down and take his hands off her. The young aristocrat said he almost fell in love with the maid when she showed her courage in the hall. But the main character does not trust the words of this experienced ladies' man. He is up to something again. Vincent Bellunita watches his best friend's antics and his blood boils. He says that Eden Christopher must immediately stop flirting with his personal maid. Eden Christopher ignores his friend's order and continues to hug the maid. The main character said that Lady Violet will wait for Vincent Bellunita in the Earl's garden in the morning. The blind count listened attentively to his maid and said that in any case he would not go on a date with his bride. Therefore, it would be better for her if she left the Bellunit estate immediately. After these words, the owner of the house kicked his friends out of the room to be left alone. Eden Christopher and the main character stand in the hallway and think about what to do next in this situation. The young aristocrat thought for a moment and said that first it was necessary to do everything possible to calm Violet Margaret down. Otherwise, it would not lead to anything good. The next morning has come. The weather is sunny and warm. Lady Violet is sitting near the flower bed and admiring the beautiful flowers that exude a wonderful aroma. After some time, the noble girl noticed that Eden Christopher approached her, accompanied by her fiancé's personal maid. Lady Violet was very happy about this, but something tells the unfortunate bride that today she will not see her beloved again. Lady Violet looks at the young men who approached her and understands from their faces that they have no good news for her. Eden Christopher looked at Violet Margaret and said that Vincent Bellunita would not be coming to her date today. The young aristocrat was very sorry that this had happened. The main character turned to the noble lady and said that she had tried many times to convince her fiancé and make him meet Violet Margaret. But unfortunately, she had failed. The noble girl said that it was all her fault because she came to her fiancé without an invitation. Lady Violet continues to collect fragrant flowers and think about Vincent Bellunit. A few minutes later, the girl made a beautiful bouquet and said that she wanted to give it to her fiancé. But most likely, he would not like these flowers because she does not know how to make beautiful bouquets. The main character looks closely at the noble lady, whose heart is torn apart by longing and sadness. Violet Margaret withstands the blow of fate well, but her heart is not made of stone and it hurts a lot. Paula really wants to help this unfortunate girl, who does not understand what is really happening now and really misses her loved one, whom she has not had the opportunity to meet for a long time. The main character turned to Lady Violet and said that she wanted to help her. These words surprised the noble girl, who no longer hoped for anything. Paula and Eden Christopher have decided to help Violet Margaret put together a beautiful bouquet for Vincent Bellunita to present on behalf of his fiancé. It's a great idea that will help the Count's fiancé calm down a bit. It will also help ease the tension that has built up in the estate. The noble lady also took part in the process of creating a bouquet for the blind Count. The girl really wants to please her fiancé and by giving him a beautiful bouquet, express her love and affection. The main character collected a gorgeous bouquet for her master in a few minutes. Lady Violet liked it very much and said that she could never make the same bouquet. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. Eden Christopher made an unfortunate joke about a noble lady and her inability to make beautiful flower bouquets. For this joke, the young aristocrat received a strong punch to the liver from Lady Violet. The blow was a glancing blow, so Eden Christopher quickly recovered and within a few minutes was again making his stupid jokes on various topics. When the noble lady was stabbing her friend, she crushed the bouquet that the main character had made. So Lady Violet asked Vincent's maid Bellunita to make another bouquet for her master. Paula had no problem agreeing to make a new flower bouquet, which she did while the noble lady and her friend discussed Vincent Bellunita and his recovery from a serious injury. Lady Violet returned to her fiancé's personal maid to talk to her. The noble girl asked the main character how old she was. Paula answered that she was 18. It turned out that both girls were the same age. This circumstance made Vincent Bellunita's fiancé very happy. She said that she always wanted to make friends with someone her own age. The main character was a little embarrassed when she heard these words. Paula is embarrassed by the fact that her social status is much lower than Lady Violet's. This could become a huge obstacle to their friendship, and it most likely will be. But by this time, the blind Count's secret servant had already collected the second bouquet. Lady Violet liked it very much, and she asked Paula to give this gift to her master on behalf of the bride. The main character happily agreed to carry out this task.